Can I call this meeting to order? Welcome everyone to the meeting of the Police Services Board. I'd like to read the Aboriginal Land Acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land we're meeting on as the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Moving through the agenda, item number 1, confirmation of minutes from the meeting held on November the 21st, 2019. We actually have a deputation, so I'm holding that down. Item number 2, confirmation of the minutes from the Budget Committee held on December the 5th, 2019. Do I have a mover? Ms. Molnar, do I have a seconder? Oh, that's correct. Good point. I will second that. All in favor? That's carried. Good point. Item number 3, the 2020 budget recommendations. That's being held for deputations. Item number 4, the Toronto Police Service Board race-based data collection analysis. We're holding that for deputations. Item number 5, memorandum of understanding between the Toronto Police Service Board and Madante Community Services. I'd like to make a recommendation right now that we do that item right after the minutes. We have a number of people here, and some of them have daycare issues, so if we could do that right after the minutes, I would appreciate that. Are we okay with that? Okay, we'll do that right after the minutes. Item number 6, Toronto Police Services Board Anti-Racism Advisory Panel. We have a motion, and we're going to hold that one down. Item number 7, the Toronto Police Services Board 2020 meeting schedule. We have a motion on that one as well, so I'm going to hold that one down for now. Item number 8, amendment of the board's audit policy. Do I have somebody to move that? All in favor? That's carried. Item number 9, independent civilian review into missing persons investigations account for professional service. Do I have somebody to move adoption? Ms. Chandra-Casera, seconder. Ms. Molinar, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 10, Toronto Police Service Board nominee to the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards. I have somebody to move that. Councillor Ford, seconder. Meritori, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 11, supply and delivery of 90 mobile workstations and associated equipment and services. Do I have somebody to move adoption? Meritori, seconder. Ms. Molinar, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 12, request to restructure conducted energy weapon. We have a deputation on that, so we'll hold that one down. Item number 13 is special constable appointments. I have a mover. Meritori, seconder. Ms. Molinar, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 14, the public minutes of the Central Joint Health and Safety Committee. I have a motion to receive. Councillor Nunziata, seconder. Councillor Ford, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 15, paid duty rates January the 1st, 2020. Motion to receive. Ms. Molinar, seconder. Councillor Ford, all in favor? That's carried. Item 16, response to the jury recommendation from a coroner's inquest in the death of Mr. Todd Fears. Do I have somebody to move receipt? Ms. Chandra-Casera, seconder. Ms. Molinar, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 17 is the quarterly report on CEW use. We have a deputation. We're holding that down. Item number 18, City of Toronto Council decision on Green Fleet plan results. Do I have a motion to receive? Councillor Nunziata, seconder. Councillor Ford, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 19, City of Toronto Council decision request to establish a community police office in Lawrence Heights. Motion to receive. Councillor Ford, seconder. Councillor Nunziata, all in favor? That's carried. Item 20, Chief Administrative Investigation of the custody entry to Mr. Jonas Beattie. Do I have a motion to receive? Ms. Molinar, seconder. Councillor Nunziata, all in favor? That's carried. 21, Chief Administrative Investigation of the custody entry to Mr. Sean Fraser. Motion to receive. Councillor Ford, seconder. Ms. Molinar, all in favor? That's carried. Item 22, Chief Administrative Investigation of the custody entry to Mr. Jean-Luc Bertram. Motion to receive. Ms. Mulliner, seconder. Mayor Tory, all in favor? That's carried.
Chair. I apologize. I was just, it took me time because I didn't have tabs here to flip back to Lawrence Heights, and I just see here that what we approved was that the chief of police report to the board, but there's no time frame whatsoever on that, and I'm always uncomfortable with that. Not because because it then tends to go off into the ether, and even if it just could be recorded in the minutes that the chief or his designate indicated that was some time frame on responding to this Lawrence Heights request, that would be satisfactory to me rather than reopening the item.
I believe the chief will report back within 3 months. Is that right, Chief?
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you.
Item number 23, Chief Administrative Investigation of a custody injury to 28.36. Do I have somebody to move receipt? Councillor Nunziata, seconder. Councillor Ford, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 24 is the Chief Administrative Investigation of custody injury to Mr. Jason Davis. We have a deputation on that, so that's held down. Item 25, Chief Administrative Investigation alleged sexual assault of sexual assault complaint 2019C. Do I have a motion to receive? Councillor Ford, seconder. Mayor Tory, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 26, Chief Administrative Investigation alleged sexual assault of sexual assault complaint 2019D. Motion to receive. Ms. Mulliner, seconder. Mayor Tory, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, now if we can move back to, well, we'll do the minutes first. I held item number, I said after the minutes. So item number 1, we have a deputation on the minutes, and that deputation is from Mr. Langenfeld. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Hart. And it's my first opportunity to see you as the new chair, so welcome to you. Just a brief point on the, sorry, I just have to find the right section of notes here. It has to do with the movement of the meeting to here, and the announcement that really the only announcement to the public was one sentence in the end of the table of contents of the agenda of the last meeting, and that was really the only announcement. So I'd like to suggest that first of all, in future, if there are any movements to the board that where the meetings are being held or when, that can be perhaps announced to the people on the mailing list. I'm on the TPSB's mailing list, and so I would have appreciated knowing that, so I could have prepared a little better for today. I also wanted to mention, I notice it's become the standard closing in your emails from the board that the Toronto Police Services Board is the civilian body responsible for governing the Toronto Police Service. The board is responsible for ensuring the provision of adequate and effective police services in the City of Toronto, setting priorities and objectives for the Toronto Police Service, approving the annual budget, and selecting the Chief of Police. And while that is certainly part of the Police Services Act under Section 31, responsibility of the board, it troubles me that there's a number of items under that section that are missing. Section 31(1)(c), the board is responsible for establishing policies for the effective management of the police force. 31(1)(e), to direct the chief of police and monitor his or her performance. 31(1)(i), to establish guidelines for dealing with complaints under Part 5, which is the complaint system, and J, to review the Chief of Police administration of the complaint system under Part 5. And I'd say that those are items that have in fact not been a priority for this board in the last 2 terms, I would say, 8 years or so, or close to it. That those items of actual oversight of the service have, in my opinion, become neglected. So I've got extra copies here of the that section, the responsibility of the board. So I'll pass it. So hopefully the board members will have an extra copy in their file. I'm sure they've all read it, but I hope they will refresh themselves on those points that I think we need the board to do a better job in those areas. And certainly part of that is also dealing with public access to the board meetings. And of course, as you know, we'll be going, or at least application has been made to the Supreme Court of Canada to appeal the searches at the Police Services Board. And so until that happens, though, I hope the board will have some more meetings outside of police headquarters so I can feel comfortable attending without being searched. Thank you on that item.
Have any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much. Can I have a mover of the minutes? Ms. Mulliner, seconder. Councillor Ford, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Let's move to item number 5, which is the Memorandum of Understanding between the Toronto Police Service Board and the Madante Community Services. And we have deputations. Mahad Yusuf, are you here? No? Reading it. Okay. Are all three of you doing a deputation together, or one?
Sorry, I'm here on behalf of Mahad Yusuf, and then we have Shamsa Bolis and Shamsa Almi, who also will be doing a deputation as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You guys can hear me okay? All right. So my name is Nora, and I am the Family Support Counselor at Madante Community Services. And today I'm here on behalf of Mahad Yusuf, who could not be with us, but he has generously wrote a written deputation that I'll be reading today on his behalf and in his absence. So I want to start by saying thank you so much for being very flexible with the schedule today. I understand we're agenda number 5, and now we are second. So thank you guys for being flexible, and thank you also to the community for being here today to support us. We really appreciate it. So Mahad Yusuf has presented the following. The Somali Canadian community is proud and resilient in times of celebration and in times of tragedy. We come together to support one another. Mending a Crack in the Sky is a true representation of the spirit of our community. The mothers of Mending a Crack in the Sky have been selfless and dedicated in addressing the crisis of gun and gang violence in the northwest of Toronto. At great personal sacrifice, they have worked to ensure that those affected by gun violence in our communities are supported and that they know the loss of any child is a loss that we all feel. They have worked tirelessly to remind our youth that they are important, that they are worthy of protection, and that their choices in life are boundless. These mothers are true professionals and role models for every Canadian. They have committed years of volunteer service to improve their safety of their communities. Their commitment is undeniable. For 5 years, they have been meeting as early as 7 a.m. every Saturday to plan and organize how to rebuild their neighborhoods. They have been showing up to hospitals to embrace and support victims, and then they have been meeting families in homes to mediate conflicts and to connect grieving families to resources. They have been hosting town halls to cultivate knowledge and empowerment in the community towards the end of transformative change. As the Executive Director of Madante Community Services, I, Mahad Yusuf, am proud to know that Mending a Crack in the Sky is a part of our organization, and I'm elated at the strides the group has made. The mothers are often the first level of non-medical support available to victims of gun violence in our communities. Our community leans on this group for support, and it is for this reason that we are working tirelessly to fund and formalize the mother outreach worker positions. The mothers' work have been fruitful, as many members of our community will attest, and their progress must be sustained. Today, the work of Mending a Crack in the Sky will bear new fruit as we sign a memorandum of understanding with the Toronto Police Service Board. The MOU will establish a formal and equal working partnership to ensure that there is transparency, trust, and sincere understanding in the pursuit of safety in our communities. I firmly believe that building equal partnership between government agencies and community groups is the appropriate model to generate holistic solutions for our biggest challenges. We're embarking on an unprecedented partnership, and we are so grateful to everyone that has played a role in bringing it to fruition. I'm especially grateful to the mothers of Mending a Crack in the Sky for their diligence and selflessness, and to the Toronto Police Board Services for their commitment as we work towards this milestone. I look forward to a successful partnership, and I'm eager to see the positive impact this initiative will have on our community, especially our youth. With thanks, Mahad Yusuf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bismillah. Good afternoon for all of you in front of me. My name is Shamsa Mahamoud. I'm one of the mother who founded Mending Crack in the Sky. Thank you for your understanding, your patience, and your collaboration with us. Our community is in crisis, and it's important to know more than ever that our views and efforts are taken seriously today. This signing of this MOU is a signal that this is happening, and we appreciate the step toward transformative change. We as mother would like to emphasize why intelligence gathering cannot and should not form any part of the relationship between the Toronto Police Service Board and Mending a Crack in the Sky. To be clear, we do not and we will not be providing or gathering any intelligence for the Toronto Police Service or any other agency. Participating in any form of intelligence gathering will undermine the trust and respect held by the mothers, which we are all depending on as a foundation in this partnership. Also, many of us and our loved ones have already faced threats and harassment due to the mere suggestions that we may be acting as intelligence gathering for the Toronto Police Service. We felt it was important to clarify the point given the danger of our personal safety and the safety risk for the community members and allies that support us. For clarifications, I will provide you a few examples of how Mending a Crack in the Sky will be working with the Toronto Police Service Board as this partnership evolves. Despite the pain and the hardship MOUs have experienced, we have come together to create and implement an action plan to help our community in crisis. Historically, many of our difficulties lies in the weakened relationship with the police service, and we have acknowledged that mending this relationship as a community will be our first step forward change. The goal of MOUs is to build a bridge between the Toronto Police Service and our community members by providing education, helping to build the trust, and be solidifying positive long-term relationship with the various neighborhoods and the Toronto Police. We will encourage and engage community members to connect with the Toronto Police Service and the other community agencies for support. This is important as many residents in our community do not currently connect or cooperate with Toronto Police Service. We will encourage and engage community members to connect with. It's important to note that we are not here to work for the police. Instead, work with the police in equal partnership to enhance our community capacity and promote overall community safety. One of our greatest strengths is doing the work I have just described is that we will be able to help the police identify culture sensitivity as they work in our neighborhood. We notice, however, that the MOU no longer makes any mention of this very important pillar of our partnership. I would like to end my deputation by asking that a motion be made to amend the MOU so that portion is included once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Shamso Elmi, and I'm part of the Mending the Crack on the Sky. And I will read it for this one. Thank you. The partnership we embarked on is designed to accomplish two transformative goals. The first goal is a community safety, which we will achieve by fostering a respectful and positive working relationship between the Toronto Police Service and the Community Day Police, especially our community where residents have intersection of being Black, Muslim, and immigrant. The second goal of this partnership is demonstrated emphasis of our model of replicants by other government agency and community group facing similar challenge. This MOU will serve as an example to encourage true collaborative approach for community safety and sustained peace. We are proud to be a part of the Toronto Police Service paradigm shift is addressing this crisis as gun and gang violence in our city. I'm sure that you will all agree that the goals of this partnership are necessary and will benefit all Torontonians. The work that we do independent and this partnership will not inclusively benefit Somali Canadian community. What presently seems like a crisis inclusive to our community is a quickly becoming crisis for every person in this city and beyond. The outline goal of this MOU give a reason to be helpful, but this hope must be a temper. The MOU is a step in the right direction but necessary resource, like financial support, must also be aligned to allow us to move forward and achieve our desired outcome. We have done this work on a volunteer basis for 5 years at the great person and cost and sacrifice. Madante, a charitable organization, has supported us by providing a safe space, sharing their limited resource, connection as the partner of mental health, and legal counsel, support as a product of documentary film that capture our journey. The life of our children and yours are at risk. However, we believe that this warrant the support of your institution and other is any effort to protect them. After all, our children and the residents of our community are Canadian. They are just deserve for a safety and fulfilled life as every other person who currently enjoy that privilege. We need to have a safe, natural nature space and ongoing professional development to achieve the goal of the MOU over the next 2 years. Historically, groups like our which tackle the difficult but important to prioritize at anti-racism and Islamic phobia have not received the level of funding and support afforded to the other groups. The Toronto Police TPSB's commitment is MOU is a historic step away from the usual evaluating of our concern and disbelief of our competence as a leader. We appreciate commitment in the MOU funding and asking you to take a step further as our allies in leading your writing assistant to obtain sustained funding and additional training resource for our group. We do not wish to have this partnership becoming another example of tokenism, thereby diminishing the statement impact of the MOU. We look forward to your commitment and cooperation for this matter. And additional, in this unanimously passed motion put forward by Ken Jeffers and Francis Nziara at July 31st on this year. Mental health and anti-racism advisory panel were slightly to be included in the process of forming this MOU. We were never connected with either tenet of the motion, which further impeded the scope of the MOU. We identified this area of concern to be a factual and truthful in our mission and bringing an end to crime in the Black community. We own the frank assessment to ourselves, our community, and entire city of Toronto.
Can I ask you to wrap up quickly, just over 5 minutes?
Yeah. We continue to our partnership, historical, significant, and we're grateful, anticipate the positive changing capacity of product. The Mother's Outreach Worker will continue as we are driving and inspired by our desire to protect our community, our kids' life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, any questions of the deputants? Councillor Nunziata?
I just have one on the second deputant, Shamsa. You mentioned that you wanted the MOU amended, but I didn't hear the last sentence. What was it that you were recommending?
The last one? The last sentence.
You mentioned that you would like the MOU amended, but then it stopped. You didn't indicate what you wanted amended, so
Yeah,
I didn't catch it.
We would like, because there was not included the part of, or it's not clear, the part that, the part I was talking about the intelligence gathering, was not included the MOU.
And just
Oh.
just the end there, it says to amend the MOU so that the portion is included once again.
It's not, yes.
Oh, okay.
Include once again.
It's just that I didn't hear it, so I
Oh,
just wanted
to include, yeah,
clarification.
to include
Thank you.
once again.
Thank
Any other questions? Ms. Chandrik Sarah?
Thank you. I wasn't at the July meeting when this motion was originally made, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Anti-Racism Advisory Panel, along with Ms. Notasha Massaquoi, who's here today. We're happy to meet with you in the future, as well as the Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Panel as well. Just wanted you to know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much. We'll take this into the board's hands now. Have any questions of the service? No, seeing none. Can I have somebody move adoption? Councillor Nunziata, seconder. Councillor Ford, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for coming. Looking forward to working with you. Thank you. Now we'll move back to the agenda order to item number 3 on the budget. And Chief, I believe you have a presentation on the budget. And we have some deputations as well, which we'll hear after the budget presentation.
Thank you, Chair and Chair members of the board. I'm pleased to announce to you today the presentation of the 2020 budget. This is a result of many months of work and discussion, so I want to first acknowledge the work of many members of the team who have brought us to this point, specifically my Chief Administrative Officer, CAO Tony Vinziano, and his team for doing a great job. Our budget is about investing in people, communities, and technology to meet the needs of policing in a growing city. The service will continue to focus on intelligence-led policing and deployment to ensure we are where the public needs us the most. We are investing in both our uniform and civilian people and serving our communities. We are adding resources to improve public safety, to address pedestrian and traffic safety, and building stronger partnerships through the expansion of our neighborhood community officer program. We have a track record of fiscally responsible budgets. We've managed a 0% increase in 2017 and 0% in 2018, and we've delivered over $100 million in efficiencies while implementing our modernization plan. This operating budget requests a 3.9% increase, of which 2.8% is required to meet our collective bargaining agreements. 1% of the requested increase will fund our planned investments. These investments, combined with our move to a new shift schedule, will support us in moving towards a more proactive policing methodology. We are also requesting a total of 341 net new officers in order to support moving to a more proactive policing and enforcement model. These additional officers will augment the priority response unit's approach that is proactive, intelligence-led, and response-focused to keep our communities safe. The addition of these new officers will help the service enhance community safety and allow us to build towards increasing proactive policing. We will talk today about our opportunities and the challenges facing the service with the new shift schedules and how we will support the service in moving towards a more proactive policing model. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to our Chief Administrative Officer, Tony Venenziano, and to his team.
Thank you, Chief, and good afternoon, board members and Mr. Chair. We're here today to present the Service's 2020 operating budget request, our 2020 to 29 capital program, as well as the 2020 parking enforcement unit request. Assisting me with the presentation today is our Acting Director of Finance and Business Management, Cindy Grant, and I also want to extend a thanks to Cindy and her team for the great work that they've done through what has been a very long and arduous process. So we're still guided by the Way Forward report in terms of objectives, in terms of where we want to be, or being where the public needs us the most, embracing partnerships to create communities, and focusing on the large and complex needs of a city. Our priorities is to ensure that we have sufficient staffing levels to be able to deploy those resources as effectively as possible. We want to enhance our capabilities to continue with the modernization journey, knowing that every once in a while we might have to pivot and perhaps go in a different direction. And certainly we want to do all this in a fiscally responsible and accountable way that emphasizes transparency and sustainability. And so to actually create those goals or be able to achieve those goals, we want to be intelligence-led. And as the Chief pointed out, we want to be reactive but also proactive in terms of preventative activities that allow us to help enhance public safety. We want to be enhanced and enabled and advanced technology. And as I said before, we want to be properly resourced both on the uniform and civilian side. So when you look at the modernization, and the Chief talked about this, we've achieved $100 million in savings in the last 3 years. We achieved 0% increase in both 17 and 18. And that was all premised on the need for investments at some time down the road. And so our budget last year and our budget year this year actually talks to some of those investments that are required both on the operating and capital side. But if you look at what we've achieved, we've now moved forward with the ability for the public to put parking complaints online. We get about 150 to 200,000 parking complaints a year, and so you can appreciate the toll that takes on our communication operators. We've also civilianized a number of positions, and this is, again, all with the objective of actually allowing our police officers to focus on core policing activities. And so as an example, we civilianized or created district special constables who are taking work away from the police so that they can focus on those calls that are priority calls. In 2019, we also moved forward with 700 connected officer devices, and that's been expanded now this year using the grant from the province to 2,800 connected officers, all of which allow us to meet our objective of a much more mobile and effective public safety service. You can't prepare a budget without looking at exactly what the environment is. And right now, Toronto is growing at an exceptional pace. From 15 to 23, we're expected to grow by almost 500,000 people, which is effectively the size of Hamilton. So you can appreciate that creates challenges and puts a toll on public safety services as well as other city services that are also effective. Combined with that, or as a result of that, we're getting more calls for service. We've increased traffic. There's more crime potential, and there's more city events. And the more city events, so we're doing more special events across the city, which is great. Those require more resources, but it also requires that we actually provide safety in different ways. If you look at our per capita, and that's the chart on the bottom, you'll see that when you compare us to other large urban centers like Montreal and Vancouver, our per capita numbers are actually below both those cities. And will continue to go lower as the population increases and our resources increase as well. Along with the challenges of a large, complex, and growing city, major crime continues to go up. It was up. You can see all categories are up from 15 to 18, and all categories, with the exception of robbery and homicides, are also up in the 18 to 19 year-to-date. Gun calls, shooting incidents, and shooting victims are all up from 15 to 18, with gun calls have gone up 28%, shooting incidents 48% during that period, and shooting victims 46%. And they all continue to go up in the period 18 to 19, with a 6% or 6.7% increase in gun calls, a 16% increase in shooting incidents, and a 22% increase in shooting victims. We're also dealing with persons in crisis on a greater basis. And you'll see people with mental health challenges have gone up 21%, and is now stable or constant in 2018 to 19. We're dealing with people who have overdosed, 61% increase from 15 to 18, and a further 28% increase in the 18 to 19 period. And also dealing with people threatening suicide, a 35% increase in the 15 to 18 period, and a 6.9% increase in 18 to 19. All of those, along with certain legislative impacts, like the cannabis legislation, the R versus Jordan, which basically requires us to move matters through the courts as expeditiously as possible, presumptive legislation, Next Generation 911, which Cindy will talk more about later. All of these require that we spend more time on calls, which then in turn takes away from the amount of calls that we can actually get to. Calls for service continue to go up, although they've been constant in the 18 to 19 period. But more importantly, emergency calls for service were up 10.3% in the 15 to 18 period and 3.1% in the 18 to 19 period. And so you can see that while calls for emergency service have gone down, if you look at the chart on the bottom there on the right side, while calls for service have gone up, our numbers in terms of uniform officers have actually gone down. And so that results in people actually having to spend more time on those, or more people spending time on those calls. The hours spent on calls for service has also increased, again, putting a toll on our members. Now, the Chief summarized this, but I'll summarize it again. So our increase, our budget for 2020, the request is $1.076 billion. 3.9% increase over the 2019 budget. As usual, our 89% of our budget is allocated towards people, and so later on we'll talk about the importance of ensuring that those people are well and healthy. The budget will allow us to get to 2,490 civilian positions filled by the end of 2020, and we'll have on average 4,930 uniform officers on average during the period, but we'll hit 4,960 by the end of 2020. As we indicated before, there's new investments that are required in order to meet some of the challenges and opportunities that are presenting themselves. We now are, in the budget, we have 140 additional priority response officers that will be able to answer calls and be more proactive and reduce response time in the community. We've got 40 more neighborhood officers, which will allow us to invest in an additional 10 neighborhoods across the city. We've got 8 traffic officers on top of the traffic officers that we already have in the city, dedicated to road safety, road and pedestrian safety. We've got 5 new equity and inclusion and human rights positions to help create a healthy and work environment, but also ensure that that environment is free from discrimination and harassment. And finally, we're instituting and in the process of recommending body-worn cameras, which will come to the board later on in 2020, which is all about enabling public trust and accountability. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy Grant, who will take you through the details of the budget.
Thank you, Tony. Chair Hart, members of the board, We've broken our budget down into two major components. We have the base budget, that is the amount that's needed to maintain current service levels, and the new investments that are required to address the challenges and workload drivers that the CAO just talked about. The base budget request represents about 2.9% out of our total increase of 3.9%. And the lion's share of this is for the collective agreements that were negotiated between the board, the Toronto Police Association, and the Senior Officers Organization. This accounts for almost $29 million, or 2.8%. The remaining 0.1% increase, or just $800,000, is attributed to all other base changes in the budget, which I will explain in the following slides. The most significant part of our budget is the base salary requirements. These represent a very small pressure on the budget at only a 0.7% increase. And this base budget maintains our current complement of 4,850 officers and 2,490 civilians. This allows for the filling of 150 critical civilian vacancies, such as our communications operators and our records management staff. It builds in funding for our previous year decisions, such as civilianization of positions like our district special constables and our crime analysts. And also a notable impact on the budget is the added day in 2020, which will cost $1.9 million. Of course, this cost is removed in the 2021 budget. The pie chart shows the breakdown of our premium pay budget. Premium pay is the cost for members working outside of their regular working hours, such as attendance at court, which represents approximately a third of our premium pay costs, overtime when members stay beyond their shift to complete a call or to meet a deadline, and callbacks when members work additional shifts to meet operational needs. If you look at the graph on the right, you will see that there's a relationship between premium pay and staffing levels. The blue bars represent the staff, and the line represents premium pay. And you can see that there's an inverse relationship between the two. When we had higher staff levels, premium pay was lower, and last year and this year, due to our reduced staffing levels, premium pay has reached unsustainable levels from a financial, an operational, and as well a well-being perspective. So in this year's budget, in the 2020 budget, we have reduced premium pay by $6 million as we add staff to meet our operational requirements. But it must be noted that there is some risk in achieving that number, as it's premised on building the numbers of staff, on implementing a new shift schedule, and also on what service demands will be. The pie chart on this slide shows the breakdown of our statutory deductions and benefits, and the largest piece is for our OMERS pension plan at 40% of the pie. The increases in this category are primarily related to two things: our medical and dental claims that have been rising, which accounts for $700,000 of the increase, and secondly, the WSIB costs that continue to put a pressure on our budget with the introduction of the legislation around presumptive PTSD. This is causing a pressure of $1.4 million on our budget. Here you can see the breakdown of our reserve contributions. Both the sick pay gratuity and the insurance reserves are managed by the city, and the city determines how much we contribute to those reserves each year. Central Sick Bank is our equivalent of LTD, and the largest contribution that we make is to the vehicle and equipment reserve. In order to meet current and future requirements of these reserves, we had determined that we require an additional contribution of $3.8 million in this budget. However, we have not included that in the budget on the basis that we will be requesting surplus funds from this year to be contributed to the reserve. And then the increased contribution would be required in the 2021 budget. The other expenditures amount to about $80 million in our budget, and the largest of these expenditures is the IT system maintenance at $22 million. This category also includes operating costs to keep our cars running, like gas, tires, and parts, as well as uniforms for our officers. Some costs are going up in the other category. As we add technology, our computer maintenance costs increase, As capital projects end, we need to include funds in our operating budget to maintain those assets and to provide ongoing support. And also, we buy our fuel through a joint contract with the city, and the 8-cent increase is in the gasoline is based on the city estimated rates. Despite these increases, this category overall is going down by $1 million in 2020, and this is primarily because of the savings from the completion of our transition to voice over internet protocol and various other expenditure reductions like ammunition. Our revenues are going up by $2.9 million in this budget, and this reflects the increases that we have seen in paid duty rentals and also in criminal reference check revenue. New this year, the city has approved a draw from their reserve for cannabis-related enforcement of $1 million, and this city's reserve was built from funds received from the Ontario Cannabis Legalization Implementation Fund. This will be used to offset our costs of targeting illegal dispensaries, of training, of impact on our frontline demands, and on processing and destruction of seized cannabis. So that concludes the base portion of our budget. You'll see on this slide a summary of the enhancements that we're looking to make in 2020. These new enhancements are designed for public safety impact and comprise $11 million or 1% increase over the 2019 budget. I'm going to give you some detail on each one of these key investments on the following slides. First and foremost, we're investing in people. This is where we know we can have the biggest impact on public safety. We've talked today about the challenges facing the service with increased calls, increases in major crimes, the changing nature of crime, and importantly, the significant growth in the population of our city. Our goal is to be where the public needs us most, and this investment will help us get there. There are 4 groups of new service members that I'm going to be speaking about, totaling 188 officers and 5 civilians. But it's important to note that the onboarding of the 188 net new officers will take place over time due to the ebbs and flows in the numbers of officers that we have. In 2020, about 230 officers are estimated to leave. 341 hires are planned to both replace those officers and also to make the needed investments in the net new officers. You'll see on the right-hand side of the slide that we will add 80 on an average basis in 2020, and we will reach the full complement, adding the full 188 by 2021. Now I'd like to turn to some detail about how we determined the requirement for the 188 officers. The addition of the 140 officers for the Priority Response Unit is the largest new investment of 2020. The number of 140 officers came to be through a significant amount of research and consultation, and an external specialist in police scheduling was used. This specialist looked at demands for service, response time standards, goals for proactive policing, and also considering the amount of time that officers spend on vacation, sick, or training. The analysis determined that 140 would be the number of additional members required for a proper staffing model for the Priority Response Unit. And we can achieve this with 140 officers for 2 significant reasons. The first is that we have an agile Priority Response Group unit that allows officers to be more immediately available across the city for service calls. And then secondly, and most importantly, we are moving to a new shift schedule that will allow for strategic placement of our officers at peak hours. This new shift schedule is the single largest change that we've done. Notably, this shift schedule change represents a significant positive collaboration between this board, the TPS, and the TPA. This investment is designed to improve response time, to reduce victimization, and to help us provide more proactive policing. And I should add that this investment will also help improve officer wellness with improved shift schedules, reduced reliance on premium pay, and a renewed focus on proactive work such as traffic enforcement and responding to community safety concerns. So I'd now like to turn to this budget's investment in Toronto neighborhoods. The evidence is clear. community policing is more proactive and serves as a deterrent to crime. It's also what we continually hear from the public. They want more officers dedicated and visible in their neighborhoods. This is why we're enhancing our neighborhood community officer program with an investment of 40 officers to expand the program to 10 new neighborhoods. In 2019, Council passed a decision to accelerate the implementation of the neighborhood program, and this investment is responsive to Council's call. The outcomes that this will contribute to are better engagement with the community, reduced crime and victimization, increased public safety, and an improvement in the trust in police. As you are aware, there has been a considerable discussion and concern from citizens of Toronto on traffic and pedestrian safety. And this is why we're determined to help ensure we have a fully dedicated team for traffic enforcement. Today, for context, our traffic services unit is staffed by 127 officers who are focused on collision investigations and frontline traffic enforcement. Collisions are, of course, after the fact, but traffic enforcement is proactive policing that helps to establish a culture of driver awareness and attention. And that is why it's important to establish a fully dedicated, intelligence-led team that focuses entirely on enforcement. This investment is being supported by a $1 million allocation from the City of Toronto's Vision Zero Road Safety Plan. And this will be revisited again in the 2021 budget based on the results of the team in 2020 to determine the requirements moving forward. I'd now like to highlight our 2020 investment in civilian positions to help us better serve the city. This investment of $400,000 in equity, inclusion, and human rights will allow us to hire 5 new civilian experts, bringing the total size of the unit to 10. The focus of these new roles would be on implementing the service's race-based strategy, as well as promotion of a healthy work environment and the establishment of a center of excellence. As a service in a city as diverse as Toronto, it's vitally important that we have an appropriately sized team to provide leadership in this field. And now finally, I'd like to turn to our technology investment in 2020. Body-worn cameras are our technology solution to increasing public trust and accountability. It will help the service to deliver on its commitment of unbiased policing. And it's critically important technology for a modern service in a modern city. We've done significant work consulting with officers and the community to determine the right kind of solution, including a previous pilot and examination of lessons learned from that pilot. The reaction was quite positive and supportive, and a cost of $4.8 million is included in our capital program for the infrastructure and device requirements. Here in the operating budget, we reflect a $2.5 million investment in a cloud-based solution for body-worn camera, and we plan for implementation to begin mid-2020. And so that brings us to the end of the new investment component of the budget, and I would now like to walk you through where the money comes from for the budget and where the money goes. The pie chart on the left shows you that we have a net budget of $1.076 billion, and this comes from property taxes. The balance comes from various other sources like provincial recoveries and reserves. And on the right, you see where our funds are spent. 89% of the budget is spent on people, in salaries, benefits, and premium pay. The other 11% funds day-to-day operational expenses like the ones we talked about earlier. Now, looking forward in our outlook, based on what we know now, our current staffing levels, our expected grant funding, and any economic changes, 2021 would see an increase of 3.6%, and 2022 would see an increase of 4%. But of course, this is subject to things that may come online, like the new NG911, and continued growth in calls for service in a growing city that might require additional investments. I'm going to turn it over to the CAO again.
Thank you, Cindy. So this request allows us to make a number of investments. We're going to hire another 341 officers on top of the 400 plus that we've hired this year. We are going to be hiring 150 civilian positions, and I can't overstate the importance of hiring the civilian staff to actually support those who actually provide frontline activities and duties. Without them, they wouldn't be able to do that work. So those are critical hires that help us day to day, but also with respect to projects that they are also required to work on. We talked about a number of investments, and this chart is intended to show that those investments satisfy multiple objectives. So if you look on the right side, with the new shift schedule and the priority response unit officers, 140 that we're going to hire, those will help us improve response time, but also ensure that we're there when we're needed the most during peak and high demand periods. You look at the shift schedule again and the PRU officers that we've added, as along with Vision Zero traffic enforcement officers, and those will help improve pedestrian and traffic safety. The new shift schedule and the priority response unit also will enable us to deal with less callbacks, reducing our reliance on overtime, and increase the wellness of our officers. And so you can see down the line, the neighborhood community officers, along with the PRU officers, who will now have more time on proactive and preventative activities, will also enable us to engage better with the community and forge those important partnerships with community members. And finally, the PRU, the neighborhood community officers, the equity and inclusion and human rights positions, all contribute to officer wellness and ensuring that we have an environment that's free from harassment and discrimination. And that, Mr. Chair, concludes the operating portion of the presentation. We'd be happy to continue, or we can, yes? Okay. Capital. So capital program is intended to make strategic investments that basically support an organization's day-to-day activities. In 2020, our capital program request, which excludes carry forward, is basically $50 million, and it's basically funded from three main areas. The vehicle and equipment reserve, that's funded from our operating budget, development charges, and the remainder is then funded through debt issued by the city. Capital is a longer-term program, as I indicated, so our 2020 to 2029 capital program request is $587 million, and $202 million that the city will have to borrow on our behalf. And that excludes carry forwards. But you can see that it funds a number of the investments that we talked about as part of the Way Forward report and as part of what we need as an organization to move us forward. Investment in facilities, and that's not investments in bricks and mortar, that's investments to ensure that the processes and the activities that are carried out, that those facilities actually enable those new processes and activity. An example of that would be how we manage our prisoners. Information technology. That is not only, that's Next Generation 911 that I'll talk about later, but also ensuring that our equipment is life-cycled in a reasonable period of time. And we're also making investments in information through ANCO. Vehicles and replacement. That is part of our replacement. We have about 1,700 vehicles in our fleet, and this allows us to actually replace those vehicles as required. Radios replacement is part of our communication, and then we have equipment that would include CEWs, body-worn cameras, etc. So some of the major projects, and Cindy's covered some of these. This is in capital as well, body-worn camera, because it's going to be funded both from capital for the devices and then from operating as part of the ongoing day-to-day charges. And again, those are the investment in body-worn cameras will allow us to increase transparency and enhance and maintain public trust and accountability. The district policing model, the 54-55 amalgamation, which will take two facilities and consolidate them into one facility. The 32 division renovation, the construction of a new 41 division on its current site, amalgamation of 13 and 53, 22, 51. Those are all required to enhance operational flexibility and to deal with an aging facility infrastructure. The Analytical Center of Excellence, ANCO, Information is critical to our daily operations and to decision-making, and this system will allow us to have more reliable and more accessible information to enable those decisions to be made on a day-to-day basis. Next Generation 911 this is just the first phase that's in our budget, and I'll talk about the second phase in a minute. We're in the process of either having issued or will be issuing a request for proposal very soon. This is a legislated requirement by the CRTC, which will enable real-time text, and eventually the transmission of video and pictures to our communication operators. Vehicle and equipment life cycle replacement I talked about before, and that's just making sure that our equipment and vehicles are in proper working order. And we've also added 90 cars for our priority response. This is for the additional 140 officers that are required under the new shift scheduling, as well as for our district special constable program. This will improve response time and will again enable proactive and preventative policing, including traffic enforcement. The second phase of Next Generation Unwind is one that is not really clear right now, to be perfectly honest with you. There will be a requirement for additional space. As communication operators get text as opposed to just phone calls, as they get video, as they get pictures, the time that they're going to spend on that call will increase exponentially. And we're trying to do our best to use technology to actually mitigate the number of people that additional people that we're actually going to require. But it will require more people, which in turn means that we will require more space. One of the things that we want to do is work very closely with the city. This is not just a Toronto Police Service requirement, it's our emergency service partners. But also I think there's an opportunity with 311 to look at synergies that we can create together as we move forward. So the first step in that whole process is hiring some external expertise that will analyze our situation, look at best practices that perhaps have occurred elsewhere in North America. We'll be probably one of the first in Canada to do this. And just come back to us with some of the challenges, the issues, options, and recommendations that we can then consider both here, but also I think in terms of the city context as well. So we have $500,000 in our budget to enable us to do that study. I think it's money well worth spent in terms of moving forward in probably a much more effective way, because the investment that's going to be required could be very significant, and so we want to make sure that we get this legislated requirement right. And I think everybody appreciates that 911 is probably one of the most critical components of our service. It's where it all starts in terms of someone needing help, and so we want to make sure, like I said, that we do it in the most cost-effective but also value-added way. And that's my presentation, or our presentation, with respect to capital. The last budget is a budget that is not in the Toronto Police Services budget. It's actually a budget that's included in what they call the city's non-program area, and it's part of the overall city parking tag operations program. The program actually starts with us when we start enforcing parking bylaws. It then moves to the city, who collect fines for violations issued. They then schedule and support the administrative penalty tribunal system, which came into effect a couple of years ago. And then they manage and administer disputes. The part I'm going to talk about today is the Toronto Parking Enforcement Unit budget. So our request for that unit is a $49.2 million budget. It's a 4.1% increase over the 2019 operating budget. Again, people represent the most significant component at 86% of the budget. And our complement right now, and we are asking to go 10 above temporarily, is 404, of which 357 are actually parking enforcement officers. In 2019, the unit was very busy and basically had the following accomplishment. They enforced the rush hours through a campaign. They had a heavy truck enforcement campaign, the Queen Street Pilot Project, which involved moving vehicles to a side street to actually make that whole process more efficient. They are in the process of initiating the electronic tow card. They issued about 2 million tags. They towed about 30,000 vehicles, and they responded to 150,000 calls for parking complaints. So in 2020, as I indicated before, we will be looking to go above 10 above our normal complement temporarily. And that's due to the fact that in 2019, this year, we lost about 90 people, 90 parking enforcement officers to other positions in the service, district special constables, as well as police officers. Normally, we would lose about 30. Now, not all 90, of course, moved to those positions, some separated, but you can see the discrepancy between what was the normal case and what we experienced last year. So what we want to do is, on a temporary basis, is increase our complement by 10, which will then enable us to better deal with those losses, which you don't expect are going to be as significant, but nonetheless, it does impact our ability to enforce, and so we want to make sure that we're aware. The other thing that the unit has done is actually move some of our people, where facilities enable or allow, closer to where they enforce. So right now, we have a district in the northwest, and we have a district in the east who have to travel sometimes 2 hours a day back and forth, taking them away from their enforcement responsibilities. So we've actually had people now working out of our 9 Hannah facilities and soon out of our 22 Division facility to actually do that enforcement, and recognizing that 70% of all the tags issued are issued in the core of the city, downtown part. So this basically is an accounting of the request, and you'll see it's a $49.2 million request. $1 million of that, or 2.1% of the 4.1, is actually the salary settlement. The remainder, in terms of equipment, there's they're moving to new vests for our parking enforcement officer. That's a one-time expenditure of about $120,000. There's $600,000 for the ability to move above complement temporarily, and we'll revisit that next year. And so the overall increase, as I indicated, was 4.1%. And that concludes parking enforcement. We are now ready to take any questions.
We have, Tony and Cindy, we have some deputants, so I think we'll hear from the deputants, then we'll bring you back for questions, okay? Thank you. Our first deputant is Miguel. Welcome.
Thanks. Thank you, Jim. Is this thing working? Oh, yeah. So, thank you. I sent my written deputation to the clerk, so hopefully she was able to distribute it. At the last meeting of the budget committee, with regards to Zero Vision and the traffic officers that are going to be hired, I think the total number is 8, which will ensure pedestrian and bicycle users' safety in city streets. Mayor Tory was in attendance yesterday in the big opening one of the new TCSC buildings. One of my sisters, neighbors from this community spoke on this matter. And I want to be this part of the record that my sister, Mary Austin, contributed with a suggestion that when you push the button to cross the street, don't just go straight, but make sure that when you are going to cross, make eye contact both sides, left and right, and go through. So those are the advice that Mary Austin, a Regent Park mother, provided to Mayor Tory yesterday. So let's talk about the root causes of violence. See, we need to fund schools, not cops or prisons. That is the message from the poor community, the Black and brown community of Toronto. Poverty, poverty, poverty. Wow. This is the poverty reduction strategy. Since 2015, we haven't yet reached the goal. the mark, the benchmark where people that live in poverty are going to be out of it. We're still struggling with this. Last Friday, Brother Kania Singh, a lawyer, spoke with regards to the project community space. We oppose to the request of the $4.5 million to expand this project. We are dealing with serious poverty for many Black and brown families. The father, in many cases, is absent for the family because that person is incarcerated, fighting made-up charges against him. So there is a situation where the mother is left alone to look after the kids. In many situations, and this is a fact told by my daughter to Mayor Tory at the last executive committee when we're talking specifically on the poverty reduction strategy. She told Mayor Tory, members of the young boys, who are now the replacing of the head of the family, the elders, boys or girls, had to engage in criminal activities because there is enough money in the house. A mock job salary does not fill up a hungry stomach. Many kids are dealing with trauma. She also requested the mayor that we should make public transit free for those who live in low income, not just those in ODSP and Ontario Works. Why is it easy that each summer, when the issue that comes to this board and city council, we pass it unanimously without any further discussion? We just approve millions of dollars. But when it comes to poverty reduction, zero. We had to wait for the province and the federal government to come to our aid. So we are fast to get money from the city coffers to the police services to deal with these matters. But we are neglecting to deal with the root causes of poverty, which leads to this situation where many children are incarcerated right now. I have 7 members of my community arrested. Many of them were under 15 years old. One of them, I think the other was 17 years old in Regent Park. That is sad state of affairs that we're living. Mr. Kanea, the lawyer, is right. Kids are not born criminals. They act out of desperation because they live in extreme poverty. Welfare rates should go up. That is the changes in legislation that to be made. Mr. Tory, perhaps you can address this matter with Doug Ford, the province, and ask him to increase the rates on our Ontario Works and Ontario Disability pension rates so that we can escape out of poverty. Perhaps better jobs for our youth that will give them an encouragement to decide whether I'm going to take up a gun so that I can rob a store and I can feed my family, or I can choose, I'm going to go and work for the city, I'm going to get a lot of money, and don't have to
ask you to wrap up, Miguel.
And become a criminal. So let's stop the criminalization of the poor, and instead of investing in money in the police services, we should invest in our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much. Mr. Langenfeld on the operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. I'd like to first point out that we, on some levels, have gone backwards in the budgeting process. Back in 2018, the budget included figures that specified what officers were in which command structures, and the board had, and the public had some idea of where our resources were being invested. And in 2019, that became a summary of command level information. And now in the 2020 budget, that's gone from the police service. And I know historically, Mr. Sewell is up here as well to complain about the lack of information provided in the budget. And typically after everybody's speaking, we hear somebody come back from the board or the service and say, oh, well, that's on the website. But let's talk about what is on the Toronto Police's website. There's a budget page. It's got basically 6 sections. There's a 4-page Excel spreadsheet that has the line-by-line budget request. There's a 1-page infographic. There's 3 one-page spreadsheets that deal with the capital budget information. There's the presentation that we saw here of 37 pages of bullet points and graphics. And then there's the open data spreadsheet with canned maps and analytics and access to the open data. What we don't have is information on where are the officers, where is the 90% of the budget that's spent on salary and wages going, what are these officers doing? We know that we're looking at adding 140 officers, actually 341 officers, 140 to the public response. The rest, I take it, are going to be from people leaving the staff, but I can't see how this board can possibly evaluate where the funds are going and approve a budget when you don't know what the staff are doing, when you don't know what percentage of the money spent on salaries is going towards command staff and supervision, and what percentage and how many officers are out there dealing with the people on the streets. I can certainly say that I applaud the addition of 8 officers in the traffic unit. I'd called for that before, of additional traffic enforcement. But historically, that seems to be the only thing those officers are out there enforcing is the speeding laws for the most part. And as somebody that's out there driving all the time in our streets as a truck driver, I can tell you that that's not the biggest problem. That certainly, based on studies, reducing speed does reduce the severity of injuries and the number of fatalities from those collisions. But it isn't what's going to reduce the number of collisions. It's the people out there that are running red lights. It's the people out there that aren't driving in the lanes, that are driving up the shoulders, that are turning when they shouldn't be. And so I pulled out a couple excerpts. Deputy Chief, passing. There's just a few copies there, but those are some excerpts of the Highway Traffic Act. And there are laws on the books, Section 132, for unnecessarily slow driving prohibited. And as somebody that's on the 401 for a majority of my day, I can tell you there's a lot of cars out there driving 80 kilometers an hour in the passing lane. And other people want to get around them, so they'll drive up the shoulder, or they'll drive 140 as they cut across 2 lanes and back again. And there's a whole lot of near misses out there, and those are what are causing the accidents. We've seen deaths reported of, or at least serious accidents reported of people that were driving up the shoulders and ran into cars that were stopped there on the 401. Now, that's where I tend to spend a lot of my time, and I know that's primarily provincial jurisdiction for enforcement, but those are same issues happen on our city streets as well. We have people that make left turns from the right-hand turn lane. We have people that stop in traffic to make a turn rather than pulling into the lane. I see there's one intersection I could point out to you, one driveway where rarely a day goes by that I don't see people ignoring the no left turn lanes and pulling out into the middle of traffic. That's where one of the people was killed recently, being run over in your report on Shepherd Avenue there. It's not just speeding, and I certainly understand you want to put in speed cameras, but when you look at the reports, you can take a look at the service did a blitz in the school areas, and less than half of the tickets that were issued were related to speeding. The majority were related to other problems. When you take a look at the services report on what were the causes of pedestrian injuries and fatalities.
Can you wrap up, please?
Okay, thank you. In fact, those very few of those are related to speeding issues. They're related to issues in intersections and things like that. So part of the problem is the concentration on the wrong areas of law enforcement related to the Highway Traffic Act. Thank you.
Mr. Langenfeld, I believe you also have a deputation on the capital budget. You can go right to that if you like.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about one of the items in there is the body-worn cameras. And of course, I've been pushing for that, and I'm happy to see that we're looking at moving forward on that. I have some concern that I know in the budget presentation, Mr. Veneziano, or I believe it was the assistant, mentioned that there had been public consultations on this. And I'm sure there have been, but there has not been what I would call a thorough public consultation on what are going to be the guidelines governing the use of these cameras. Are they going to be on all the time, or are we going to be in a situation where we have what we had during the pilot project, which was officers turning on the cameras when they felt something was going to happen? And of course, we had naturally incidents where cameras didn't get turned on, and that's the concern. I've dealt with that myself, where when it's a camera that you're responsible for turning on, you accidentally turn it off when you didn't mean to. I'm sure that happens to officers, but the problem is that that doesn't solve the problem of the problem officer that intentionally avoids recording when they know they're going to step out of line. And so one of the things I'd like to push for is making sure that we have continual recording on those devices, notwithstanding that after the fact, maybe we can start purging some of that information as we find out that there's no complaints about it. But I think the service needs to move towards making sure there's some more public consultation. And obviously, I'd like it to be a meeting somewhere that I can actually get into without having to surrender certain rights. The other issue that was on the capital budget was the additional police vehicles. And I brought up before, there's the question of the painting of the police vehicles. We know that it was the previous, I think, 1.5 terms of city council before had actually brought that issue up and inquired of the service why the vehicle painting had changed from white and blue and red to gray. The chief had initiated a evaluation of the public, and if memory serves, it was 80% of officers believed that the important thing in the coloration of vehicles was to demonstrate officers' authority, and 70% of the population stated that they wanted to continue with the white and red and blue vehicles. So these new 170 vehicles or whatever it is, what are they going to be painted, and are we going to continue with this new color scheme? The other side is the district special constables. I know when you were talking about approving the special constables, one of the points was that they were not going to be identifying themselves as police officers. But the only time I've seen one of these special constables, he was in a police car, standard white and red and blue police car that obviously said police on the side of it. So knowing to look at his uniform, I could tell from the lapel badges that he was a special constable, but indeed his vehicle in fact said police officer. So I think that's something that we certainly need to make sure that the special constables are not identifying themselves, or that public doesn't perceive them as being officers. Thank you.
Any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much. We bring the staff back for questions now. Okay, the board, any questions on the board? Anybody have a question on the budget? Mayor Tory?
I just have one that relates to one of the comments Mr. Langenfeld made, because I remember we had quite an exchange with Mr. Sewell about this last year, and I was sparring with him about the quantity of information we do put out there, because the sheet he held up that had 6 or 7 screenshot type things on it was less information than I have seen over time. My recollection of the discussion last year was we said, no, in fact, it wasn't just those 6 or 7 screenshots that were on there, that if somebody wanted access to almost what I'll call the line by line that I see as a board member, and I think I see it as well as mayor, even if I wasn't on the board, that was available. And I seem to recall that's where we ended up, that in fact that material was somewhere available, and I just want to make sure it was, and that people could have access to that, because I think it should be. I mean, it doesn't get into exactly what he said about exactly where officers all deployed. Of course, I don't know that either. But I know generally line by line sort of what the money is going to do, more so than 6 screenshots that he was, or whatever, that he was talking about.
Okay, so we've gone back and forth in terms of over the years in terms of the level of detail that we actually include on the site, and you're right, Mayor Tory. There was a time when we actually had a lot of detail broken down. I remember you asking the question, and we're actually able to show, whereas this year, the process was changed by the city, and that's not why we changed the level of transparency. But it was just a much more onerous process, and so our ability to actually put some of that together in time for the budget, tabling of the budget, proved to be difficult. We are meeting, and the chair and I have already discussed this, in terms of 2021. We need to start that process sooner and really agree on the level of detail that we're going to provide on an ongoing basis. There is a line by line, and I think that gives the reader, whoever that may be, an idea of the order of magnitude in each account, but it certainly doesn't get down to the level of detail of by unit or by, whatever else people want. And so really it's something that I think we need to land on and stay on moving forward. There is the presentation, there is the budget report, which I think provides quite a bit of detail. But yes, we don't have the level of detail that I think we had probably a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, actually.
All right. Well, I will, through the chair, weigh in on that, because I think, and I think even now for 2020, if we get things finalized, and I know this year we were down to the last minute because we've actually moved up some of the dates of the budget process, so I understand that, but I think for the public to participate knowledgeably in this discussion here and at the budget committee, it's better to give more than less, but maybe I don't see any reason why, subject to discussion, we can't give more later. At least allows people to know the questions as the money is actually being expended. But that's fine, thank you. I just thought we had done more in previous years.
We definitely had, and sometimes it's also timing in terms of the numbers changing and then having to change everything, but that's something that we're committed to and certainly we'll look at moving forward.
Thank you.
Councilor Nunziata?
Yes, thank you. You mentioned during the presentation for parking enforcement that a lot of them have left and transferred over to special constable, correct?
Yes.
Why would that happen?
People, parking enforcement, it's actually a very logical ladder in terms of moving from a parking enforcement officer to a special constable to an officer or right from. So this actually is a good thing in terms of our internal people applying for other positions within the service. So it was just that it seemed like last year was a lot higher because we were hiring a lot more people on the uniform side. It actually caused that number to be a lot higher than it normally is. Some of the people also left, they just separated the service in terms of retirement, but some also took advantage of opportunities that existed and were able to be promoted to other jobs in the service.
What's the total of staff do we have in parking enforcement?
We've got about 400, that includes supervisory staff, but we've got about 360 actual parking enforcement officers.
Throughout the city?
Throughout the city.
Do you know how many in each district?
Between the west and the east?
I think they have districts, don't they?
Right now, they're basically the east and the west is basically how we run the operation out of. No, I don't have that number, sorry. Certainly can get it for you.
Okay, well, my next question is going to be, and that's the reason I ask that question, is I'm sure other councillors as well get this complaint. Schools, we seem to have a lot of problems with schools where they're asking for parking enforcement to come out, and so it's unsafe for children when their parents are dropping them off. So there's a huge demand for parking enforcement to come out to the various schools and tag or cars. And the reason I asked that question on how many, because I've been attending a lot of schools in my ward, and I was told there was only one in my district that actually gives up parking tickets. But do you know, has there been a huge demand for the enforcement at various schools? Is anybody from parking enforcement here? Oh, yes.
Superintendent Baptist is here.
I mean, I can speak generally to the parking concerns. Specifically, when I do go out with councillors to do town halls, by far one of the major complaints is parking. I know that with Vision Zero, with the introduction of technology, that is another piece to the equation that I believe is going to be implemented Q1 of next year. So working collectively with the city, I think it'll provide an opportunity to create a much safer environment for the school zones in particular.
Right. Because I know that we've been getting a lot of calls from the schools asking us, the city and parking enforcement, to go out because it's very unsafe for children. I know a lot of it is parents dropping their kids off, running across the street, not safe. It's a nightmare in some of these schools. So my question was to park enforcement. Is there a huge demand for enforcement at schools in the morning and in the afternoon? Do you know?
Yeah, there is a huge demand for that, and we have a program. We kick it off every year in September where we have traffic enforcement police officers from local divisions working with parking enforcement officers because it's sort of a holistic thing, the drop-off and pick-up times. It's dangerous, and we also want to make sure that it's efficient because in some of, as you're well aware, I mean, some of these areas, it's a bit of a nightmare. Just
it's a nightmare. I've had children that have been hit by cars. So there's a huge demand now. So
yes, so we have a cadre of officers that deal with that every day as part of their day-to-day duties in parking enforcement.
Okay, but they can't. You're pretty limited because I was told that there's only one per district, so you're pretty limited. You can't be at all the schools at the same time, right?
Actually, I think what you're referring to is we have different areas in the city where there is an area supervisor within the parking enforcement structure who has an individual parking enforcement officer for each of the zones within their area, and they are the people that liaise directly with counselors' offices, schools, the staff like that. So what they do is they're sort of the go-between. They go and deal with specific problems, but they also are the people that go out with other parking enforcement officers and bring resources as necessary.
Yeah, I guess at one point maybe we should be asking the school boards to maybe fund some of these resources because there's such a huge demand, right? Yeah.
There always is.
Mr. Nozia, did you have a motion you want to table now? Okay. One more. Ms. Chandra, Sarah? I didn't know we had one more.
Thanks for the presentation. Just looking at your slide 2020 operating budget summary, where the money comes from. Just wondering, I know that another source of your budget is from the province. I do recall just last week seeing an announcement about all the grants that you received. Is that tallied in here or is that tallied separately?
Well, that's included. For us, that was the Community Safety Program grant, which is about an $18 million grant.
So is that in the miscellaneous section?
Where's that in the recoveries?
Grants. There's $10 million of that total is in the grants, but it's a net impact of zero on our budget. We build the money in for the revenue, and then we build in the costs.
Any further questions? No. Councillor, I don't see any further questions. Councillor Nunziata? Yeah.
So on item 3, on 3.1, yes. Am I speaking on all of them? Okay.
You can speak on your motion. And speak
I'll move the recommendation. Okay. For the increase in the budget and budget as presented. But my motion is that when the service is determining how to allocate the new neighborhood community officers created as part of the 2020 operating budget, consideration be given that some of these new officers be assigned to neighborhoods in 12th Division. So I'm going to move that. And I'm moving that motion, this 12th division is very much need of neighborhood officers, and I'm very happy that we're hiring more officers this year. That's a demand that I'm getting from my constituents on the number of gun violence that I have in my ward. In particular, what they want to see is more police officers. They want to see more police patrol visible, and they feel a lot safer. And so I'm very pleased that we're hiring additional police officers, and I'm hoping that the neighborhood officers will be allocated to 12 division and divisions where there's very much in a need. And I want to thank the chief as well. Just recently, when we did have that gun violence in my ward, where there was allocated resources from other divisions that came in and helped, and that really made a difference. And I support the budget as presented. And I asked those questions for parking enforcement, but I guess, that would be something that we'd have to maybe deal with at another time as far as the school issue. But that's a big issue for me as well. I'm having huge requests from schools, from principals yelling, we need more enforcement. It's just so unsafe for the children. I really don't know what the solution is, because a lot of it is just parents just dropping their kids off, running across the street, in a hurry. What can you do, It's a real issue, in my opinion, in some parts of the city. So I want to thank the staff for the budget, and I'm moving the recommendation. So thank you.
Tori, did you have a question? Okay. Tori? Yep.
Well, Mr. Chair, first of all, I want to make a few remarks about the budget, because I think it's very important to do so here at this board, given that the budget is $1 billion of taxpayers' money, and the issue of community safety, I think there's hardly any issue, if any, that the public would say is more important. But I want to start by saying thank you to the staff. It's a big undertaking, and I do think we should be striving to be more transparent, just because there's nothing, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's a lot of things right about it, just because I think the money is being responsibly spent. I had noted at the outset that the community has made it very clear to me, as I'm sure it has done to my colleagues from City Council, and to, for that matter, probably uniformed officers and the command, that the community safety issue is incredibly important to them. And it's not all about policing, but it has a lot to do with policing. It's not all about the complement. I find these debates that go on among the commentators interesting, because everybody has their own number as to how many police officers they think we need, and they don't necessarily take account of the fact that we've been trying, I think correctly, in the wake of transformation and otherwise, to have as many duties performed by people like special constables and civilians as possible, so that highly trained and frankly expensive police officers are applied where they're best going to make a difference. But I think, given that 90% of the budget is in salaries and benefits, obviously staffing decisions are key. It's not all about finding solutions solely in the budget for key issues such as gun violence or the renewal of trust in police, because I think we've been working on the latter as well. So I don't think the budget is about any one of these things. It's about all of them. They're all important. Policing is a key element of addressing threats to community safety, but it's not the only one. And I'm not sure if my formulation is the right one, but I've consistently said, as mayor, because I get asked about this a lot of the time, that there are three sort of priorities that all go together. Support for the police, which, of course, since the budget is 90% wages, it consists of financial support, but other supports as well, recognizing they've got an incredibly complex job to do. Secondly is changes to the laws and the implementations of laws, such as bail, and Councillor Nunziata quite properly referred to this earlier on today, and even some of the numbers that came out last week have indicated that continues to be a problem. I don't know how many examples that those who need to look at these things and question them have to have, but I think the number was well over 100 people that were cited during Project Community Spaces, just going from memory, that were people who were arrested and let out on bail when they were already on bail when they got arrested for firearms charges. And so to me, this is not acceptable. And so there are changes like that. And then finally, there's investment in neighborhoods, kids and families. Support for the police isn't all about police complement, but it is the matter of complement is key. And so if you look at it in this budget, without knowing what that number is, that's the kind of the right number, We started around 4,800. This is going to allow, and that, by the way, was a number not drawn out of a hat, but it was a number that was carefully considered by the Transformation Task Force, which consisted of equal numbers of police officers and civilians, and they came up with a number in that range. But we are where we are. I don't think there's any such thing as a static, permanent number that's going to determine the right number of police officers, because it depends on so many things, including growth in the city, which has taken place, including changes we can make in how we police, which can include the use of technology, such as we started this morning with photo radar. But I think that if we want to address all the issues from gun violence and trust to community and traffic safety, for example, and a host of other issues, we've come to recognize we would have to slow down attrition if we can, and I think some of the shift things we heard about today will accomplish that. Slow down attrition and give people fewer reasons to leave the police service, recognizing lots retire, but also we have to hire. And so the budget provides for hiring 140 plus police officers net. It allows for an additional allocation of officers to beef up the neighborhood officer program, including in areas like 12 Division, I hope, because we have had a concentration of problems there, and add additional resources to provide, for example, for the reestablishment of the special traffic enforcement unit that was disbanded in 2012. I think that the 140 plus new officers and the neighborhood officers will help us to address gun violence and help us deal with the restoration and renewal of trust in policing, because you will have these officers in the community, not just reacting to radio calls and so on. I think the same is true of the investment in body cameras, and I don't think it's a small matter that there are millions of dollars allocated in this budget for the introduction of body cameras. I think these things are all, I think, heartening, positive developments. It will take the investment in policing up by 3.9% this year. But I think these things are going to go up and down, and I would just point out, this is now the 6th budget I've been part of as mayor and as member of the police board. The average over that time has been 1.6%. So this year is at the higher watermark, but I think the public understand that in a circumstance where we've had the kind of challenges we've had, whether it's with gun violence, I think most importantly and most acutely, or with traffic and pedestrian safety, or with the issues of trust in the community, that this is the time to make this kind of investment, and that there will be other years going forward that you'll make less of an investment. And I think that they do understand that. But I also want to make the point today that we need more of the kinds of partnerships we have with the other governments. The province has stepped forward and helped us a number of times. They've helped to establish a special bail court. They've helped with some of the grants that were referred to earlier. And I hope that they'll be able to do more with us. The feds, I think, have to step up on the investments in kids and safety and neighborhoods. And I think that they've made some commitments during the election campaign I hope will come to fruition, which is not part of supporting the police per se, but it's going to make it easier for the police to do their job and perhaps diminish the job in the sense that they will have invested in some of the root causes of this violence before it arises. So I would just say that, there's been lots of commentary since the budget was published, and that's good. It's good to have a good, broad discussion about this. But I think the public expect the people who count on us to keep the community safe, the people who pay the bills, I think they're expecting right now that we're going to make an investment in the safety of the community, and that it's going to be made in much the way that it has been done by the experts, because this budget was derived from the police themselves. I think I spent quite a lot of time looking at it, obviously. I think you have as the board chair and the budget committee. We've had deputations from the public, and there have been various questions, but I haven't heard anybody really arguing with the core. They've said we have to invest more in neighborhoods and kids and families, and they're right. But I haven't heard too many saying we should be investing much less in the police, because I think people understand that it's kind of a three-legged stool, and I think that is so that we can have the best chance possible to deal with gang activity and gun violence and criminal behavior, and so that we can put those together hand in hand with the neighborhood programs and the neighborhood officers to restore trust and to keep the peace. So I will be supportive here of the budget. I will be supportive of it at City Council, because I think this is the right way to go. And I think it bears noting that there was a lot of time spent and effort by everybody involved, actually also finding ways in which we could do some of the additional things we're doing, the hiring and so on, not just through asking the city for more money, but also through finding efficiencies in the way we do things now. And I think that's worthy of note. Perhaps not enough attention was drawn to that in the presentation, because often that's not the way these things are presented. So I thank you for your indulgence in listening to me, but I will be very supportive of, and I am supportive of this budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to wrap up by thanking the chief, Tony, Cindy, and all the staff involved in this budget. I saw firsthand how much work you all put into it, and I know we all appreciate it. Thank you very much. Councillor Ford, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Jim. I didn't know if you wanted to speak last or. That's all right. All right. Well, thank you. No, I just want to echo my colleagues' comments on this budget and also use this opportunity to thank our Toronto Police Service for all the work that they do. I think it's an appropriate time as we wrap up one year going into the next year, and the money this work will be invested in doing. I think it's very appropriate to thank our police, and also, as my colleagues, I'm going to be absolutely supporting the budget. No doubt, people in my community, in the northwest part of the city and across Toronto, has seen the effects of maybe a higher crime rate or more major crime and shootings in our city. And I think this is a great investment in the 140 net new officers that will be put into our communities, and particularly on primary response, but also the investments it's making in our neighborhood officer program, and we see the benefits with growing relationships in our communities. Just today with our Somali community coming in and growing those relationships, so I think that is very important. So I just want to put my support to that as well, and most definitely urge my colleagues on City Council to support this request.
Thank you, Councillor Ford. Councillor Nunziata, you were going to move all of the budgets as amended by your motion?
Yes, please.
I have a seconder. Mayor Tory, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Now we will move forward to item number 4. The Toronto Police Service Board's race-based data collection analysis and public reporting policy. And Deputy McLean is going to deliver a presentation to the board. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to provide an update to our efforts to implement the board's policy. A quick overview of what got us here today. And first, it's important to acknowledge that Toronto's communities, particularly its Black communities, have been calling for race-based data for over 30 years, and that there have been many reports that have reflected race-based data collection within their recommendations. And through the Anti-Racism Act and the Anti-Racism Data Standards, we now have a consistent framework for the collection of race data to further the elimination of systemic racism and promote equity for all Ontarians. Standardizing the collection of race data means standardizing the conversation and therefore the understanding around public sector service delivery, policing included, and its impact on our communities. Like the anti-racism data standards, the board's policy on race-based data collection, analysis, and reporting comes into effect on January 1st. It's a little over 2 short weeks away. The project team has approached the implementation of both the data standard and the board's policy as being consistent with our modernization plan, as described in the Way Forward, a journey that we embarked upon in 2016, with its expressed desire to be a community-centric police service. Modern policing is about relationships, and this has been a guiding principle in how we have approached our work and our thinking to implement both the data standard and the board's policy. So, what have we been doing? Since a lot of infrastructure being put in place. So we've been putting a lot of infrastructure in place. In addition to collaborating with the board and its anti-racism panel on the development of the board's policy, We've conducted a review of our capabilities to operationalize our larger vision of equity, inclusion, and human rights, including race-based data and other important corporate projects. And you heard that we've taken significant steps to build capacity internally, and our budget provided some information that we continue to do this. As well, we've created a governance committee comprised of senior leaders across the service, specifically for race-based data, so that we can match the complexity required to operationalize the board's policy and the data standards. In September, when the board released its policy, the service committed to meeting the January 1st requirement to collect race-based data for use of force incidents, and included a commitment to analyze data related to level 3 or strip searches. After the September board meeting, the team kicked into high gear and began a series of internal and external consultations. We've explored partnerships with subject matter experts to inform our thinking so that we can take a thoughtful approach towards our implementation, including the development of training curriculum. And Sulin will take you through that in a moment. The objective was to meet the January 1st deadline, but always with a view toward what would be required beyond this point.
So you can see our governance committee structure here. And in order for us to effectively deliver on our goals of implementing this robust plan, we had to consider all of the corresponding elements that would be involved and assign a lead or leads to provide guidance, leadership, and direction. This is the decision-making body that oversees this entire project. So specifically, with all command members playing the role of executive sponsor, we're able to obtain executive leadership support throughout the life cycle of this initiative. This also demonstrates the commitment of the organization to this endeavor. It's also being co-chaired by Deputy Barbara McLean of Human Resources Command, as well as myself, who is the unit commander of the Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights Unit, representing both the balance of operational and subject matter expertise and bringing inclusive change. Any large change initiative within a complex institution requires change management approach as a key driver of success. With a superintendent, Tony Riviere, and 2 inspectors, Stacy Clark and Justin Vanderhayden, these senior officers are responsible for generating buy-in from our members, including frontline officers, and responding to and addressing any key internal issues or questions that may arise from the members. This is done through focus groups and the creation of unit champions at the division level. Communications is also a key function required to support transparency both internally with our members and with the public, and is being led by Corporate Communications Director, Allison Sparks. To ensure systems capability, data quality, privacy controls, and analysis and public reporting, Manager of Analytics and Innovation is the lead for this data management area, and that is Ian Williams. Community engagement is a core element of this entire initiative. This will be the largest community partnership initiative in the history of the organization. The anti-racism data standards requires community input at all stages of the data collection, including training, analysis, reporting, and in the development of action plans. Deputy Chief Peter Ewan, who currently has Community Neighborhoods Command, is the lead for this area. The data standard and policy also require the development of procedures and training to implement data collection. Governance and training is led by Staff Superintendent Myron Demkew, who has oversight over our corporate governance area as well as the college. All of these areas are being supported by the Equity and Inclusion and Human Rights Unit. We also know that we can't do this alone. A key component for data collection has to involve partnerships with our communities. As Deputy McLean stated, the call for race and identity-based data collection has been decades in the making, and it's incumbent upon us to get it right. And in so doing, we need deep subject matter expertise to assist in ensuring the best outcomes for this very important work. We have entered into a thought leadership partnership with the Wellesley Institute, led by Dr. Kwame McKenzie. The Wellesley is a nonpartisan charity and has significant expertise in international best practices in socio-demographic data collection, research, and trends, and examining and understanding systemic issues and the disparate impacts of the social determinants of health on communities. With the support of their research and community engagement team, they will be supporting our efforts throughout the project. Also, Dr. Grace Edward Galabuzzi, an associate professor at Ryerson University, is a renowned academic and community leader, known for his work entitled Canada's Color-Coded Labor Market, which examined ethno-racial inequality in Toronto. Also, as a member of the Color of Poverty, he has a long history of anti-racism practice in Canada and is developing our training curriculum. His bio is at the back of the report. Further to this, our key external stakeholders include the Ontario Human Rights Commission, who we engaged and aim to continuously work closely with on this initiative for support, guidance, as well as partnership. Both areas of the Solicitor General that have oversight of this initiative are the Public Safety Division through the Police Services Act, as well as the Anti-Racism Directorate for the Anti-Racism Act and data standards. We have been engaging with them and will continue to partner with them at various stages of this initiative. And importantly, the Information and Privacy Commission has been and will continue to be consulted on our privacy practices to ensure secure management of data and the appropriate safeguards. The Anti-Racism Act regulation and the board policy call for the collection of race-based data on use of force interactions beginning January 1st, 2020. However, the Toronto Police Service led the way in deciding to take it one step further and include level 3 searches, also known as strip searches, to our January 1st data collection start date. This was in being receptive regarding the concerns outlined in the OIPRD's report, The Golden Rule, released earlier this year. The Public Safety Division of the Solicitor General and the board policy outlines that the service will begin with perception data. This means that officers will record their perception of the individual's race for these interactions. Under the data management pillar in our governance structure, a data working group with subject matter expertise across the organization meet regularly to discuss the technical, analytical, privacy, analysis, and reporting elements of this work.
Okay, so we've embarked on a number of communications and consultations. So we've recognized that there hasn't been a lot of public education about the data standards. And today's presentation and the fulsomeness of our board report is meant to facilitate some of this. We've used a variety of communication media, creating tools that allow us to communicate the purpose, both of the data standards and the board's policy, and how the service will operationalize them. We've been learning as we've been going along. We've been refining our tools and our messages to reflect the input that we have received from both community members and service members. Starting with internal engagements, they're a key part to our approach, particularly for our communication strategy. Beginning in June, members of the Anti-Racism Directorate attended service facilities to provide technical briefings on the data standards to service members, board staff, the Toronto Police Association, and the Senior Officers Organization. The purpose was to understand the data standards and the legislation and the thinking that went into both. I'd actually like to thank the Anti-Racism Directorate. They've been very generous with their staff and helping us to understand the legislation. Throughout October and November, we saw a number of internal consultations with our senior leaders where we spoke about both the data standard and the board's policy. And so Lynn mentioned the creation of unit champions to facilitate information sharing from the project team to the front line and from the front line to the project team. We're using a decentralized approach for information sharing. On the community consultations side, this is a key piece of how we've approached implementation thus far. We've employed multiple means by which to reach and consult community members, as Sulin has mentioned, led by Deputy Chief Peter Ewan. These have included those who work with service members already, so members of our community police liaison committees and our community consultative committees. Town halls have been scheduled for 4 locations across the city. 2 have been conducted, and there are 2 more being conducted this week. One tomorrow night at the Chinese Cultural Center on Shepherd Avenue in Scarborough, and Thursday at the Regent Park Community Center. Both are from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. The town halls have been live streamed on Facebook, where people could submit their questions to be posed at the sessions. And recognizing that not everyone would come to a police-facilitated meeting, 40 agencies were recruited to host local focus groups. Tools were developed to support the consultations, and the information is being fed back to the project team. And these focus groups are continuing. I believe they're finishing up this week. So at the bottom left, you can see how many people we've reached, either in person or through social media. So roughly, by my math, about 175,000 people. By no means thorough, but we are happy with the early results. So community feedback, interestingly enough, has actually mirrored member feedback. There's been concerns about the data being used to reinforce stereotypes, whether it be racist police officers or criminality within our communities. Both have also expressed desires that race-based data lead to better service delivery. And both have called for continuous engagement throughout this process. We've also heard community concerns about safety and reluctance to provide self-identity information to police. Both community members and service members are wondering where, what, how, and why, and what this would look like. So this begs further conversations on this, which we are planning throughout 2020. Now Sulin will take you through our efforts on training development.
The anti-racism data standards and the report of the independent Street Checks review call for the development of training specific to race-based data collection and highlights the necessity to include the historical context of the impacted communities, as well as examine systemic racism and trends. The historical uses of data on communities, in addition to highlighting the experiences of Indigenous and Black populations. We have already consulted and will continue to consult community members to provide input into our curriculum, as well as connecting with key stakeholders and experts to develop and ensure a robust and authentic learning experience for our members. Dr. Galabuzzi, as the curriculum designer, with the support of the Toronto Police College and the Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights Unit, will utilize a staged approach to training that begins this month and involves a combination of online and in-person training, as well as the ongoing refinement and evaluation through focus groups and surveys. So now we have to look at what's ahead. You'll see our key milestones for 2020, which is an overview of our project plan for what it is that we aim to achieve. We begin Jan 1 with a collection of data. We also will move towards seeking input from Indigenous communities. Now, given the historic impact of data collection on the Indigenous community, we will implement a targeted outreach plan to ensure that their perspectives are included in the process. We will continue with the ongoing engagement of not only the community, but also our members who are vital stakeholders. We then move to a mid-year report on self-identification. As mentioned by Deputy McLean during the slide on community engagement, community members have expressed great concern over the collection of self-identification data, many of which stated that they would not give their racial identity to officers. Our engagement process on this has and will include surveys, focus groups, both within the grassroots and mainstream community organizations, as well as through our annual general survey and focus group process that the service undertakes to measure its impact and service to community, and the community consultative committees, in addition to the town halls. We will also be engaging our officers on this topic as well in the new year. What we already know is that the anti-racism data standards set out by the Anti-Racism Act set forth perception data as a mode of collection for policing interactions. This was done in consult with various communities, as well as key stakeholders across the province. The province's data standard highlights the concern for the dignity and well-being of community members during data collection, which could be difficult to ensure during the course of many different types of interactions with our officers. We also know that both the Anti-Racism Directorate and the Ontario Human Rights Commission advised against self-identification data in the context of policing in their response to the development of this policy. And we also know that the Ottawa Police Service, which has been collecting data on traffic stops for the past 6 years, uses perception data. Further, we know that there are over 4,000 policing agencies that currently collect race-based data internationally, and only one of which collects self-identification data and with lower degrees of compliance. The board policy, while progressive in its intent, needs to also align with the situational context of the dignity and possibly the realities of the experiences of our frontline officers tasked with its execution. It's extremely important that we consider officer safety and community and individual dignity as paramount to this decision. We do not want to put officers at risk, and we do not want to cause harm to the dignity of the members of the public that we're trying to serve. Given this context, we are doing our due diligence and engaging broadly with the general public, key stakeholders, as well as impacted communities to determine feasibility. And if so, in what interactions would self-identification be appropriate? As such, we will come back to the board with a mid-year feasibility report. The next step in our process as well is to procure the services of an independent expert or organization to review the data and our analysis and our action plan, who will then report on their independent findings for transparency and accountability. We will also be learning from international agencies, which we will be contacting and visiting, looking at their best practices in the collection of race-based data to assist us with our strategy. We do know that many international organizations have been collecting race-based data for 30 years in some cases. We'll be also embarking on the development of a community advisory panel, which will be providing guidance and support during the analysis, reporting, and action plan development phase. This panel will consist of community members and leaders and academics and stakeholders. We will also be developing a measuring and monitoring framework through our data working group with the support of the Wellesley Institute. We will be able to develop a quality control and monitoring framework to ensure data integrity, as well as to identify important trends for analysis. Which brings us to Jan 1st, 2021, which is where other interactions as defined by the Anti-Racism Data Standard and the board policy will come into effect. We also anticipate that we will need a year of data collection in order to be able to effectively identify significant trends to be analyzed, vetted by the community advisory panel as well as our members, and then to develop an action plan for distribution. This thorough process will likely take us to the fourth quarter of the fall-winter of 2021 before we can report on any findings in addition to the process.
Pending any questions from the board, we'll...
Actually, we have some deputations, so if we could take the deputations first and then bring you back.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. First deputant is Miguel.
Is it working? Oh, there it is. So Deputy McLean is correct. The community is going to be engaged on this race-based data collection on Thursday. I'm looking forward for that conversation in Regent Park. This is a long fight by several members of the community. We have been consulted many, many times. I'll give you an example. The Independent Street Checks Review by a former Honorable Michael Tulloch. Then we have the Independent Police Oversight Review. Then we have the City Anti-Black Racism Action Plan. So the city, the Toronto citizens have come and spoke to you with the issue of body-worn cameras. That is the problem with the implementation of the race-based data collection. We cannot engage in a conversation. According to the police officer, claims that we don't want to put the officers in danger, and we want to disrespect the dignity of the people, right? So how we can ensure that accountability process is successful? Body-worn cameras, because those are recommendations made by the public many, many times. We have spoken on this matter to you, but you seems to put it to the back burner. I'm going to give you an example of what our city manager is asking for the city. The top bureaucrat of the city of Toronto, he says, our mission is to serve a great city and its people. Our motto is our diversity and our strength. Yes, but with this data collection, we are not. What are the outcomes? Is this going to end up in the black and the brown communities are going to get ahead and get better jobs, better opportunities to move on? Because all I see is that more officers are going to get more hours, more pay, and the other part is that the body-worn cameras addresses the issues of accountability, the issues of legislation. And when we had to go to court and prove that the officer he said, he said is correct or incorrect. I give you my example, and this is going to be of support for the case of my brother Chris Langenfeld. This is the city, the Toronto Police Headquarters. This is the entrance, the screening table. There I am myself on this picture. However, when I made a Freedom Information in the year 2017, they said they cannot find me on the camera record. I made one in 2019, and they said, "Oh my God, we haven't found nothing, Miguel." So I wonder if I am a ghost, because you don't seem to find me on the video screening of my interaction with members of the screening table. Honestly, I'm just trying to believe that I'm a ghost. So please, I will suggest you review those footage on your CCTV cameras and address those concerns that I have brought to the attention of Mr. Ryan Treshner as a board secretary. And yes, I accept your apologies, but as a progressive member of the community, I want to ensure that the next guy behind me do not suffer the same treatment that I received last Thursday at police headquarters when I was attending a budget meeting that I registered with 72 hours in advance, and I was asked to show proof that I was in that building. I had to submit my emails to the police officer who blocked the way like in this fashion. She will not let me in unless I prove that you invite me to the board, to the budget committee meeting. And I have asked Ryan for an apology from the chief, because his officers, the reputation of this officer or the service is down on the floor again. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you. Any questions to the deputy? Seeing none, thank you, Miguel.
You're welcome.
Clinton Reed. Welcome, Mr. Reed.
Well, my name is Rayon Brown. I'm actually part of the Collective Impact Project, which is one of the initiatives that's funded by the Neighborhood Projects Program.
My apologies. We just had to want to switch up the order of the speakers coming in. So
Right.
the speakers are there, but the order
fine.
might be switched up a little bit.
That's fine.
Thank you.
No problem. So I'm just speaking on behalf of our group because we had an opportunity to look over some of the things that's going on with the race-based data collection. So some of the recommendations that we had in terms of Justice Project or some of the concerns that we had was the policy does not include the collection of the police officer data, such as gender, rank, badge number, years of experience, shift, assignment, platoon unit, division of the officers who are using force. The reason why we want to really stress this is because it will help highlight evidence about whether a particular officer is involved in an incident, disproportionately stops and searching indigenous, black, or other racialized people. This information needs to be available, and this will help with the board to make evidence-based decisions using this data that's also collected about the police officers as well. This will also build confidence within the community that this data and the strategy is not just being a Band-Aid solution, that things are actually getting done. And this would make the policy consistent with what its stated purpose on delivering the non-discriminatory services and enhancing accountability. The police should not stand in the way of individual accountability for racial discrimination. And this is a systematic issue, and racial bias can partly be the product of individual officer bias and stereotyping. So this is just basically one of the situations that we identified as a concern for us in the data collection. Both parties need to be recognized. If we're collecting information about people within our communities, we also need to know those officers that are also we also need to know the data from the officers as well, from their viewpoint as well as from the community, so it's fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any questions of the deputant? No, seeing none. Thank you, sir. Mr. Reed, are you ready now? No, apparently not. Okay. They've changed the order. That's fine. Who do we have here?
My name is Shaquille Bahai, and I'm also a part of. Thank you for having me. I'm also a part of Collective Impact, and I would like to say a couple of things about the race-based data collection that the Toronto Police Service will be engaging in. So, like my colleague said, that's also a part of the project that I'm in, is that we would like to see not only data collected on community members themselves, but also if there's going to be any sort of engagement between community members and also collecting of that information, we would like to see data collected about what's the rank, gender, and also the sort of positions that police hold when engaging with with community members. This particular evidence will highlight how we will move and create policies to educate police officers moving forward about how they could better interact with community members. And this goes into the systematic racism and biases that police officers might hold when interacting with community members. Also, we would like to understand a little bit more about the sort of processes of training when engaging in these stops with with community members. We find that it's really important to really understand the sort of methods and procedures when police officers need to take the other step to investigate folks and to see where it goes from just like a stop to an investigation is also fairly important. And a lot of community members within the Collective Impact would like to see a more clear understanding of the sort of training that police officers do get when and especially about how to deal with marginalized communities, and to see if any anti-oppressive sort of frameworks are used when training police officers. We do think that an ongoing dialogue between community members and police officers, particularly in their communities and in their districts, is highly important on an ongoing basis when it comes on to training, so they can get updated not only about the sort of adverse interactions, but also just and we find that moving forward, that collective impact can make a really big statement on how we can engage with police officers, because we understand that there is a need for more positive interaction moving forward on both parts. So collective impact is really thankful for that opportunity to try to start bridging that sort of positive dialogue between police officers and also community members. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions to the deputant? Seeing none. The next deputant, come up, please.
Hello, I'm Christopher Mbanza, also part of Collective Impact.
Thank you very much.
And one thing we're trying to inquire on is what is the root of the anti-racism in the police force, and how do we figure that out? Because it feels like we're running around the questions, or that big question. And also, we want to get police data when they do these reports. That's basically it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Any questions to the deputant? No, seeing none. Mr. Reed, welcome.
Welcome, thank you. Clinton Reed for the record. We appreciate the opportunity to actually come back and give feedback on this particular topic. We've been engaged with Roseanne Bailey, the community engagement from the Equity and Diversity, has been a great asset to sharing some of that information with the Collective Impact, a project that you funded earlier on this year. One of the biggest aspects as we were taking a look at the race-based data strategy was the fact that, from a project perspective, it actually allowed residents to come together in a safe space to actually be able to have a dialogue about police officers in a space where they felt safe enough to have engaged in conversations with the police. In my report that I'll be bringing back a little bit later on next year, we'll talk a little bit about the fact of how communities view policing. When we were going through like our neighborhood officer training program, or just having dialogue around policing, one of the challenges that we noticed was the fact that people don't really understand what policing is. One of the things that people are noticing, we're noticing, is that people have a perspective based on their experience or their brother's experience or friend's experience, but they don't really see beyond the blue uniform. And that's one of the things that from our collective that we recognize, the fact that we're only seeing that blue uniform, no matter how much of a good intentions individuals within their uniform are doing, all we see is blue uniform. And I think the trigger point that came out of just the uniform aspect was emotional triggers that came out in terms of some of the interactions that people have had. The reason why I highlight this piece is because that's preventing interaction, that's preventing consultations. That's preventing information flowing from community to the board, to police officers, because there just isn't a relationship with the police. A group of the 20 folks, diverse group from 14 years old all the way to like 42 or so, one of the things that actually came out of there was we don't understand how police become police. We don't understand the training that police officers go through. We as residents and community members don't really know how police become police. And that's one of the things that with Deputy Ewan that we're talking about in saying of the group being able to exposed to the training to understand, so that when a police officer is talking to us as a community member, we understand the lens that they're coming from. So that was one of the highlights of that piece. And how it's tied into the race-based data strategy was because we started taking a look at some reports that were done previously. And in a consultation that I attended, I asked a question: are we collecting information about the police officer? And the response I got was no, because it's not mandated by the province. Fair enough, it's not mandated, so we don't need to. But as a governance body that's overlooking one of the toughest cities, beautiful, toughest cities that deals with quite a lot of diversity, why aren't we collecting the information of a police officer, even if it's aggregated, right? So that we can actually tell a better story. When we take a look at this timeline, we're looking at report back in 2021 about the next interactions beyond the strip searches and so forth. That's 2 years of collecting data that you're gonna come and say, yes, people are marginalized, yes, there's racism. Then you're gonna start taking a look at what are the solutions that we're gonna do. Why are we not actually including the police officers' interaction right now? Because there's two parties involved in this conversation. There's all the data from the human rights report that was submitted to you folks that came in. There's also from 2018, there's a collective impact report itself that talks about the race disparities and the engagement and so forth. Then there's also reports ranging all the way back from 1989, the Claire Lewis report. And all this information that I'm reading is something, a deputation that the human rights did for you folks earlier on this year that has all of this. And in their recommendations that you folks had adopted was that there was a portion about policing and collecting policing, understanding that there's an impact on performance measurement in a sense. We don't need to have the police officer's name at the moment. We just need to have the other party to say, when this police officer at 6:30 at the end of the night, this is the type of engagement that they've had multiple times in this community with this particular subset of individuals. And so that's one of the things that we were asking for in regards to actually requesting the board to put forward in the TPS to say, yes, we want an actual collection of the police officers' information. Back in October, you folks had a presentation from your data, business intelligence, and data units that presented dashboards. Beautiful aspect in terms of being able to categorize information. Why can't we use that certain dashboard and the expertise of your award-winning TPS business analysis team that won an award in 2018? Can't we take all the data from the human rights, from the a study that was done and commissioned?
Yes, I ask you to wrap up. You're over 5 minutes. If you can.
Thank you very much. There was actually a study that was commissioned by you folks, the Immunerators survey. The survey, that was Dr. Gervin and a professor from Rice, and surveyed over 1,500 individuals. Why can't we take that data, put it in a dashboard to actually build a baseline of actually where these interactions, and start understanding which divisions, in a sense, actually have these negative interactions, positive interactions with a variety of different racial groups. So my request to you, Chair, my last, is can the board, being a strategic, data-driven, decision-making board, make that recommendation to Toronto Police to collect the Toronto Police officers' information aggregated at a divisional level so we can have a better story.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reid. Any questions to the deputy? No, saying none. Can we bring the staff back? Deputy, you? No, it was Deputy, who was it? Deputy McLean. Deputy McLean and Sue Lynn? I don't think so. Okay, board, do we have any questions of Deputy McLean or Sue Lynn? Any questions? Mayor Tory?
Just on that last point, I'm not sure it's completely irrelevant, in the context of what we're collecting on the one hand to look at some information on the other, which is about the officers. And I understood the request was to be aggregated, so it wasn't going to be broken down officer by officer any more than this data will be broken down encounter by encounter when it's reported to the public. I'm just interested in whether that's ever been talked about, whether that's been thought about, whether it's possible, whether it's advisable.
We're certainly hearing that at our community consultations. We've heard it at the anti-racism advisory panel as well. And so there is much work that is going to be required in 2020. Our work has focused on getting us to January 1st. As we put in the report, a number of our key resources did not get onboarded until the end of September, October. So our focus has been getting ready to collect perception data for January 1st. And so within our work plan for 2020 is a number of consultations further on just perception data, self-identity data, all the types of dashboards and aspects that different parts of our communities will want, our members will want to see, academics will want to see. So that is part of our work in 2020.
Well, I would just say by way of, it's a historic step forward, and so I would want you to get the initial implementation done, which is being done on a kind of a staged basis anyway, properly and sensitively and well. And so if you've got this on your work list to sort of study as you go forward, I think that's good, and I concur in that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Nunziata. Would you want to say something, Chief?
Yeah, I want to spin a positive into positive. So I think one of the things that is going to be critical is the messaging piece, and I think that's something that we've heard loud and clear. When we talk about what the big picture is, this is a holistic process. It involves the judicial system, not just the police. And to be frank, I don't think I've seen another entity, whether in the judicial system, whether in the education system, which are participants, or whether in the child welfare system, that is doing as an aggressive job as this team is doing right here and now. And if it's done right, when it gets done right, it is going to tell stories that should have been told 40 years ago. And this is an exciting opportunity. I'm glad that working with the board, we have the opportunity to lead, and others will piggyback and copy off us, and I'm fine with that. But the leadership and the work that is being done here is tremendous. The conduct piece, certainly at all times we take conduct seriously, and there are mechanisms that are in play that are live right now. If any member of the public has a concern, I've spoken to it ad nauseum, and I hope that the community has the trust in us. But when it comes to this gathering of data, the data will speak. It will speak for itself and tell that story, which I think is what the overall objective of this whole project has been from day one, minute one, to where we are now. So I'm excited about the work that the team is doing and the fact that they're receptive and open to all angles and all criticisms and all positive feedback in order to figure out what the best playbook is as an organization to get this right.
Thanks, Chief. Councillor Nunziata?
I just had questions on the consultations. Who have you met with the community consultation meetings? Did you meet with all the CPLCs, and which groups have you met with? And how much notice was given to these groups on the sessions?
Councillor, we met with all 10 the chief community consultative groups, and we also met with 2 representatives from all the 17 CPLCs across the city, and they were given several weeks in advance of the meeting.
Okay, but the meetings that were held, the consultation meetings,
Yes.
were they scheduled in weeks in advance?
Yes,
or?
they were.
They were?
Yes, they were.
Oh, okay.
Councillor, if I may.
The reason I ask is there was one in my ward last week, and I was just told 2 days before.
So one of the things the data standard requires is that we consult with the community to develop our training. And so out of the block, we engaged Deputy Ewan, and it was great to hear Roseanne Bailey's name mentioned. So we have brought on some experts to try and get as much as we could get done in terms of getting ready for January 1st. And as I said, we have been particularly challenged. We have done a lot of thinking and a lot of planning, pre-planning, but our funding came online in September, and so key resources to set up these community consultations really didn't
So
come
you
on.
had a deadline. You had like
We
2 weeks to
completely
have
had a
all these
deadline.
meetings. So that's the reason, right?
That is the reason, and I want to assure you, and by extension, members of the public, we're not finished our consultations, because we knew we had a short time period to get ready for Jan 1, but we know that there's many more dialogue and conversations that have to happen, and they will be scheduled for 2020, and hopefully some more notice will be given.
Councillor, I just want to, I know there was a meeting in your...
Because I like to
Yep.
consult with my community, and when I find out, it's just,
There was a meeting in your ward.
Yeah.
I can assure you, the neighborhood officers from 12th Division received that notice 2 weeks prior to that meeting. They were tasked to notify the residents, and also a week prior to that meeting, it was on our social media advertising, the Toronto Police social media advertising. So,
but it's okay. I'm just asking a question. You're having more, so that's not a problem. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Sarah?
First of all, let me just please say to the chief and Deputy McLean and Ms. Knight, thank you so much for all of this work. I really want to commend you. I fully agree with the chief. I think this is a really important opportunity for this organization to be leaders, and there are many people watching and waiting to see how we do it. So this is a really great opportunity. I have a lot of comments, so bear with me. I think it's really great to hear all the internal engagement that you've been doing on this, and that you have a really solid governance structure in place that engages all of the command team, which is great. Getting buy-in from your colleagues across the service will be a key driver to successful implementation. And also really great to hear all of the community engagement that you've done. I think, Deputy, you quoted over 175,000 people have been engaged so far, which is really amazing. Also, really fantastic news that you were able to secure the funds through the Ministry of the Solicitor General to retain staff for this really important work. That's really great foresight on your part. And we just heard in the budget presentation that that grant will have a net zero impact on the budget, so that's really great. So, thanks to the Ministry of the Solicitor General for providing us with those funds. Also great to see all the expertise that you're bringing in, external expertise. Dr. Galabuzzi from Ryerson and Dr. McKenzie from the Wellesley Institute. It's so great that they're able to lend their expertise to the service. So this is really a partnership with the service and community. I'd like to request that there be quarterly updates to the board on this important work. As we've discussed, this is a brand new initiative for the service. So it will be really important to give the board regular updates and also the public. And I think it was really great to see so many deputations today too. This is another forum where we can continue to receive feedback until the service has achieved full implementation. Also glad to see that in the presentation there's a very clear commitment that all phases of implementation will be online by January 1st, 2021. I think that's a really great goal and certainly something that was discussed at the Anti-Racism Advisory Panel. It would be really good to see in the next quarterly report more information about the self-identification data that you already brought up and the expected timeline for the pilot for that. And it's been really great to have you both, as well as several members of the service at the table at the Anti-Racism Advisory Panel. So it'll be important to continue to engage that panel throughout the implementation process. So from my perspective, I think it'd be great if the implementation plan and the procedure can be brought to the panel for their advice and guidance. I think our next meeting is in February, so the timing lines up really well. So we prepared a motion that speaks to these items. I'm going to put it up.
Everybody just take time to read that motion, please. Has everybody read it? Okay. Chandra Kassar, do you want to move your motion?
I can move, thank you.
And the report?
Yes, and receiving the report.
Yep. Seconder? Mayor Tory, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for your terrific work. You've done a lot of work on this already. Really appreciate it.
Can I just say one more thing? And you wouldn't mind putting up the last slide of our presentation? Really? Of our presentation, please. I just want to make note of the report, our board report. We took the unusual step of including short bios of the people that we are bringing in to assist us with the implementation. And the skill sets that we're bringing on board, as well as the partnerships that we are pursuing, are meant to highlight that we recognize the sensitivity of identification data and to provide some assurance to both members of the community as well as to members of our service that we're taking a thoughtful approach to how we are doing the work to implement this a board policy and the data standards. I'd like to thank the members of the team who we have here, who've been doing some heavy lifting, as well as the team leads in the governance committee that Sulin mentioned on slide 5. and then the service members they have tapped to take on this work in addition to what they do for our service and our city on a daily basis. And finally, I'd like to thank the community members and the service members who have provided input thus far. Your comments are appreciated and they are valued, and they are being reflected in our approach as well as our 2020 work plan, which we're currently developing. We wouldn't be anywhere near this point without the collective dedication and commitment that we have seen and the genuine desire to get this right for our city and our communities. So a big thank you to everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now we can move to item number 6, which is the Toronto Police Services Board's Anti-Racism Advisory Panel. Ms. Chandra Kassara, over to you.
Yes. My co-chair of the Anti-Racism Advisory Panel, Ms. Notasha Massaquoi, is here. If anyone has any questions, we do have a motion. So at this point, the original mandate of the panel was to the end of 2019. So we're requesting some additional time so that we can complete the local inquest monitoring framework. We expect that will take probably about 6 months. So we were requesting an extension until July 30th, 2020. And of course, we'll continue with the quarterly reporting to the board in that time. And just to correspond with the earlier motion of item number 4, we just went through that this panel review and provide feedback on the race-based data policy procedure and implementation process.
Before we vote on that, does anybody have any questions to start with? Seeing none?
Yeah, I can move. Thank you.
Move it. Report. Seconder. Mayor Tory. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 7 is the Toronto Police Services Board 2020 meeting schedule. We have a motion on that. Put that up. I will move the motion. I believe it's been circulated. Any questions on the meeting schedule? Seeing none, that's just a technical amendment. I have a mover. I'll move it. Ms. Chandra Kassara, second it. All in favor? Thank you. Item number 12, which is a request to restructure the conducted energy weapon reporting. And I believe Ms. Chandra Kassara, this is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much.
All right, I just remind I have a deputy on this matter. My fault. Mr. Langenfeld, sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm somewhat confused by the request here in terms of, in fact, on page 4 of the request, it mentions different reporting dates of mid-May to mid-August and mid-month periods and things like that. But when you actually look back at all the requests from the board, looking back at the February 2018 and October 2018 minutes, where the board addressed this and requested the changes in the reporting. In fact, the board didn't make any such requests for these strange time periods that no doubt would cause a lot of additional work to have to try and create such reports. What the board did, in fact, request was quarter-to-quarter comparison information going back for the current year and previous year. And I would suggest that, in fact, that is still necessary. Having data on what happened in the last quarter isn't much use to us generally if we don't have information to compare it to know how that's happening on a historical basis. And since we don't have years of information to compare that to at this point, I would suggest that it is the ability to compare it to previous quarters that provides some kind of context to put that information into. And so until there's a couple of years, maybe 3 years of annual quarterly information, I think at that point then it's reasonable to look at eliminating the quarterly reports and going to semi-annual and then annual reports, but at this point where we're only having 1 year of historical information, that doesn't seem to be the correct move, in my opinion. I think when you look back at, in fact, what the board at length went through on their minutes and the motions that they made in having this information, it's all still justified in being able to compare this. When we look, pardon me, the October 2018 motion by the board was that future quarterly reports should have a definition of the person in crisis and quarter-to-quarter comparisons for the calendar year and the previous calendar year. I would say that that's still important information to have. And the other argument here was that why these changes should be made was that the collection of this information is currently done manually, and I'd say that when you're looking at almost 2 years now that this has been, conversation's been going on, I have to question why isn't this being done in a more automated fashion. We certainly in the budget report seen multi-million-dollar numbers for advancements in the digital information systems to be able to collect things. You would expect the ability to file or create an online use of force report for CEW use should be quite simple with this multi-million-dollar system that we've invested in. And so I would think it behooves the service to make that happen and get some electronic reporting of that information. The other argument from the service is that, and I believe that's actually in the quarterly report itself, item 17, so I'll speak to, if the board's okay, I'll speak to both items together since they are related, the actual quarterly report itself. That the board brings up the question of on page 13 of that item 17 on the report, at the top of the page, there is no requirement to report the use of empty hand techniques unless a subject is injured and requires medical attention. And so if you do consider my recommendation to add some electronic reporting of CEW use, I would suggest that really you should be having additional reporting of empty hand techniques being used. I don't expect that it's that common that officers are in fact using physical force, even if it is only empty hand techniques. I would hope that it's not more than a couple of times in a shift that any particular officer is using actual physical force on members of the public. And so I would have a hard time figuring out why it would be difficult for that to be reported to the public of what their justification was. I'm certainly not looking to create a mass of additional work for the officers at the end of their shift. But a simple online form of what force was used and what the officer believed the justification was, and as well having that same information for CEWs, I think in the long run would benefit the service to be able to have that information on file to look at. The one other item in item 17 on the agenda, the actual quarterly report itself, was that it does mention that there was one officer was, of the 147, and this is on page 12, of the 147 uses during this period, one PC was directed to attend the Toronto Police College for remedial training, and there were also 2 incidents involving the use of CEWs by PCs that instigated investigations of misconduct. What we don't have is the information on the outcome of what those investigations were, what, if any, changes to the training resulted from that, and how 2 incidents of potential misconduct in 147 cases of used force of CEWs compares to how many times we have reports of or investigations of potential misconduct of officers for other uses of force that did not involve a CEW, and therefore to have some kind of context to know if this is a higher than average number or whether it's in line with other use of force by the service. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments on number 12 and number 17. Any questions of the deputant? No, seeing none. Thank you very much. Chandra Kassara, over to you on number 12.
Thanks very much for this report. I think there's no doubt that a lot of work goes into the CEW reports for the board, which I think is compounded by the fact that all use of force reports are in hard paper copies, which adds to the workload. So, thanks to the Chief and Deputy McLean for increasing the staffing capacity in this area, especially to support the use of force analyst. I think that it's important that this level of detailed information is shared with the board and with the public, because this is a relatively new initiative to expand CEWs to all frontline officers. And so we need to ensure that there's transparency and accountability as the service makes this transition. So I fully support the second option that the service has identified, because although it's less frequent reporting, it does allow for a deeper analysis and includes all the information that we requested at the board in the October 2018 meeting that the deputant made reference to. So my request is that the annual reports be shared with the Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Panel for discussion and input prior to being presented to the board. This is a group of mental health and addictions experts and community members and people with lived experience, as well as service members that are established to advise the board. And so it's a great forum to get their input prior to receiving this information at the board. And so I put forward a motion to that effect.
Any other questioners on this report? No. Okay. You're going to move that, Chandra Kassara?
Yes.
Do I have a seconder on that and the report, to adopt the report? Ms. Mulliner, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 17, the quarterly report for May 15th, 2019 to August the 14th, 2019 on CEW use. Councilors.
Deputation.
Oh, is there deputation on that one? 17? No, Mr. Langenfeld already did it. He already did his deputation. Oh, okay.
I'll be brief. Again, thanks for this report. I really appreciated the level of analysis that was included. So I think this is really great work. There are some numbers that I thought it was really worth noting for the public. So on page 14 of the report, it states the following: out of 182,351 calls for police service during this time period, a CEW was used in 133 of these incidents, with full deployment required in 41 incidents. The report notes that about 40% of the time the CEW is displayed or used with a person in crisis. In this report, there was no use of a CEW on anyone for this time period, anyone under the age of 16, which is great. That's great news. However, there was use on 12 persons between the age of 16 to 20, with 4 of those being full deployment, as stated on page 11. So I'm wondering, did these 4 incidents involving youth result in any injuries?
So, thank you for your question, and thank you for highlighting the number of calls for service that we do attend, particularly in this quarter, and then the use of the CEW. It's actually less than 1%. So thank you for highlighting that. To answer your question, yes, there were 4 incidents where the CEW was used in full deployment, and they were persons aged 17, 18, 19, and 20. And just to give you some context, there were no injuries other than what we expected. So by probes, we would expect that. So we don't report that because we expect it. But I'd like to give the board a little bit of context. And so in one of those instances, in 2 of those instances, the parties were in crisis, and so the injuries that were that we saw within those incidents were actually self-inflicted, minor self-inflicted wounds. Both parties had a knife that they were pressing toward pressing on their necks, threatening to commit suicide. There was a 17-year-old male who was assaulting an elderly person and who was intent on doing that. And then there was a 20-year-old male that pointed a firearm at an officer. And in the course of this incident, a fully loaded .45 caliber firearm with an extended mag, hollow point bullets, as well as a quantity of drugs and cash were seized. And so that gives a little bit of context behind those four incidents.
Thanks. I move to receive.
I have a seconder. Ms. Mulliner, all in favor? That's carried. Now we move to our last item, which is item number 24, and we have a deputation. Mr. Langfeld.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So this was the Chief's administrative investigation of the custody injuries of an SIU investigation. And as is, and I'm not speaking in particular to this investigation. Looking at the details of this, it seems to make reasonable sense that the officers acted reasonably, as we would hope that they normally do. But a common thing in these reports is something that's specifically stated in this report on page 3. It states that the SIU issued a news release exonerating the involved officers. And in fact, of course, that's not what the SIU issues in its reports. In the news release, it in fact doesn't say anything to that effect. In the director's report, he concludes that in this factual vacuum, there is no basis to reasonably conclude that the force used by the officers fell afoul of the latitude prescribed in the criminal law. Consequently, there are no grounds for proceeding with criminal charges against the subject officers, notwithstanding the injuries the complainant suffered, and the file is closed. And that's really my point here, is that when we're dealing with the chief's administrative investigations of SIU reports, the SIU, of course, has the responsibility to determine whether or not criminal charges should be laid in relation to action by police officers. The chief, of course, as I pointed out previously, the board is in fact responsible for ensuring that the chief is in fact properly administrating Part 5 of the Police Services Act related to disciplinary matters. And what all of these reports from the chief in regards to the SIU lack is any determination whether or not there may have been any disciplinary issues, notwithstanding that there is no basis for criminal charges. And again, in this particular case, I don't even see anything where there could be disciplinary concerns, but in other cases I have seen that in SIU reports where certainly there are not what appear to be grounds for criminal charges, but there are certainly some questionable decisions made by officers, and this is, I would suggest, is the point where the chief, through his delegates, are responsible for also determining whether or not there are training matters or other disciplinary recourses that should be taken against those officers. And so I hope in future we will begin to see that in these SIU reports. That also look at whether or not the officers are truly fully exonerated, that they acted the way we would hope they act, and not simply that they failed to go so far as leaving evidence that would reasonably convict them of a criminal charge. There's a major gap between those two, and certainly the public expects a much higher level of accountability from our police force. And we expect you folks to make sure that that's happening. Thank you.
No questions? No, seeing none. Thank you very much. Can I have someone move receipt? Councillor Nunziata, second. Councillor Ford, all in favor? Carried. Can I have somebody move adjournment? Ms. Mulliner, seconder. Councillor Ford, thank you. All in favor?